Thank you for joining me. This is going to be my video on the 1996 movie From Dusk Till Dawn. I will start with a review that will contain absolutely no spoilers. Then I'm going to get into spoilers, but before I get too deep into them, I'm going to do another review segment, but one that is about a certain chunk of the film that I really want you to go in to the movie not knowing, but I do want to talk about it without spoiling absolutely everything. And then I will spoil absolutely everything. But I'm going to verbally let you know before I start spoiling anything and which spoiler section we're entering. And yeah, yes, it is rated R. So will this video be. And yeah, another movie I absolutely fucking loved. We are back to Tarantino, and yeah, I said it in my video on True Romance. Some of my favorite Tarantino is when he writes but doesn't direct. And actually, this one's directed by Robert Rodriguez. They're friends ever since yeah, their respective debuts of Reservoir Dogs and El Mariachi. They realized they had a lot in common. And Robert Rodriguez is also some of my favorite movies that he's directed are the ones he didn't write himself. This and Sin City are some of yeah. So I guess I've more or less already said I am not spoiling the twist. I am aware that, I think most people by now know the twist of this movie. It's almost 30 fucking years old. I think it is great if someone goes into this movie not knowing the twist whatsoever. So, let's see. I think a good place to start. Yeah, so with the let's start with the script. So this is another this is actually arguably let's see, I guess the most recent movie that Tarantino has written that I think a very strong case could be made. The protagonist is not a good guy. That was also how he wrote Reservoir Dogs. Other than these two, I appreciate an argument could be made for at least one other, but in these they're like, yeah, actual, like they do evil things and don't really seem super upset by it. It's for their victims. The day that these protagonists graced their village and fucking killed them was the most important day in their lives. The last one, in fact. But for these protagonists, it was Tuesday. And I do think some of his best material, I really appreciate that the other ones are less cynical. But I do think he is really good at writing this kind of thing. There's a lot of writers who they're really good at other things, but when it comes to like really making the protagonist genuinely someone that like we can't really agree with what they do, we can still think, okay, that was a pretty fucking cool thing to say or do. So he's really good. I'm not gonna spend forever on it because I talked about it in my video on Reservoir Dogs, but he's really fucking good and having us conflicted about that sort of thing, you know? Because that's the thing. You also gotta be careful not to end up, you know, kind of fucking worshipping the bad guy. You know, there are some movies that say they're trying to criticize, you know, and it does kind of end up feeling like, okay, you don't really agree that this is a bad person, though, do you? You just kind of think they're fucking cool. And yeah, basically, the Gecko brothers are trying to get to Mexico, and yeah, basically they have to get across the border. And if you watch this movie and you really want something that has a similar, you know, a vibe that of this, like, you know, someone who, yeah, the protagonist is willing to just kill people, and someone he's working with is unstable, and it causes friction and leads some really compelling moments. Yeah, the honestly, both, I was going to say first, but both of the Kane and Lynch games captured really well, and clearly there's some inspiration from, yeah, now that it feels like they're just taking it directly. Yeah, but yeah, I'm gonna get into hmm. I think that's as much as I'm gonna say about the overall setup. I think I want the rest of it to be a surprise. So the psychological accuracy, authenticity, and level of detail, in a lot of ways, tremendous. I will say there are things where the psychological accuracy, you know, they don't go with 100% what, you know, yeah, maxing that out. Usually it is purposeful. There is, like, you know, sometimes they think it's funnier, sometimes they think it's more like disturbing. Yeah, but the yeah, and the tone is, you know, there's this really effective, basically, so part of the tone is that you have this, you know, yeah, um, the character of Richie Gecko, you know, um, yeah, the writer went ahead and played the role himself. So, you know, yeah, you look at Tarantino, you know, very, very disturbing, and just this, yeah, you get kind of uncomfortable. So he was a great fit for this movie. I kid. And yeah, there's this good blend of this sort of gritty crime thriller, and then the heightened approach by Rodriguez, which I will get into more detail about. But before I do want to talk about, so the dialogue, this has some of my favorite of Tarantino's dialogue. And there are also times where, you know, just some of the scenes in general, like he writes these really, really well. And I think I want to note, they pointed out in the commentary track as well. The two of them do a commentary track together, and is really excellent if you have the DVD. In general, you know, really solid special features. Rodriguez movies, in my experience, tend to do really well at that. But there were times where Tarantino wrote scenes the way that he figured Rodriguez would. Yeah. And there are times where Rodriguez directs in a way that Tarantino would. So, for example, and they call this out specifically, there's at least one bit where some stuff is filmed through doorways. And that is a very Tarantino, you know, it reminded me of Reservoir Dogs. I gotta rewatch. I'm hoping to, soon rewatch and do a video on Pulp Fiction, you know. I forget. No, there's at least some stuff in there as well like that. Yeah. So in my video on True Romance, I talk about how... Oh, fuck. Shit, I completely forgot. Jesus Christ. No. I am not skipping. I am moving this up in the schedule because it's October. It's Halloween month. I am going to try to... There's going to be at least 3 horror movie reviews from me this month. I'm not going to definitively promise more than that for now. And this is the most horror movie. That there's some very, very scary parts in this, and of all of Tarantino's movies, you know, because obviously before this we do have Pulp Fiction and Natural Born Killers. And I do appreciate Natural Born Killers can be scary. There are times where that is a very scary movie. But it is also very much like satirical. I don't know. It just didn't feel as perfect for Halloween month as this did. So, yes. In my video on True Romance, I talk about how Tony Scott has a hyperkinetic style and how that plays very different with, from Tarantino's own directorial style. As, you know, by the time True Romance came out, Reservoir Dogs was the only other movie Tarantino had, the finished movie. You know, I think he had a script for Pulp Fiction, but, you know, hadn't come out yet, so we couldn't judge the directing choices. But yeah, Tarantino in Reservoir Dogs, the camera, you know, he uses long takes. He likes to have the camera at a bit of distance from the subjects a good amount of the time. The editing is not necessarily very fast. He likes to let things sit, let things play out before us, rather than having too much, Tony Scott, he, with him, you get the much more, like, at times genuinely frenetic editing, and he had the camera very close and more movement in the camera and stuff like that. Rodriguez is another really interesting case because the way, Tarantino's material just plays different. It's too bad. I mean, I guess at this point it's unlikely. Let's see. I think, what did Tarantino say? He's going to make one more movie or something. These days, he directs all his own scripts. You know, I think this might have been the last time. Oh, wait. Yeah. I don't think there's a movie more recent than this where he wrote it and somebody else directed it. And I do understand that. It's too bad. They're not watching this video, but if they were, if the two of you still want to, I think you could really knock it out the park. And I do appreciate they did somewhat work together. on the Grindhouse double feature, but as best as I can tell, Tarantino wrote and directed Death Proof. Rodriguez wrote and directed Planet Terror. They didn't hand each other a script, and hand the other a script. Because Rodriguez's style is different from the other two. Basically, I haven't watched every movie he's made, but I think he either hasn't, or certainly he hasn't made a habit of. Well, let's see. Yeah, I guess the only two I know of that he directed are the two Sin City movies. Other than that, Rodriguez hasn't really directly adapted comic books into movies. But his style, and he'll be the first to tell you, is very influenced by comic books, and that sort of heightening just works incredibly well with in a way you would think that it would just be a complete mess, because Tarantino, there's some heightening, but it's not really like outright comic book-ish. Like with Tarantino, what you tend to get is he'll take stuff from like older movies that he like really loved, even before he himself was able to make movies. He'll take stuff from those and heighten that, or give a slightly different, Reservoir Dogs shows the aftermath of, the aftermath of something, where in a lot of movies we wouldn't see the aftermath, or at least it wouldn't be a huge chunk of the movie. We'd see like the planning and the carrying out, and that's the kind of thing that Tarantino tends to do, but it just works so incredibly well to just have this. And also, Rodriguez, to his credit, does rein it in somewhat. He doesn't, it doesn't feel as like out there as some of his other work, including from this time, But yeah, the fact that he does just, there's these little touches that he, is fond of doing in general. Certainly was at this point in his career. So one of the ways you can see it is how they stage the action. With Tarantino, you have he'll have the camera film, but not necessarily edit. Just show it play out. Tony Scott, you have the editing, cutting back and forth a lot. Sometimes very fast, to where you just barely, like, you kind of get a sense, okay, something happened there, but it's perhaps more chaotic at times, not always. And Rodriguez, he does like for it to move fast when there's action, I mean, but he also wants you to be able to clearly make out what exactly is happening. And it's that thing of like, it's almost like a middle, medium, a mix of the other two directors' styles. And just he brings some of his quirks, and just I think I've more or less said all I want about the camera. I suppose one of the things that Rodriguez, at least in this, part of his career, like his movies from the 90s, one of his strengths is that he will really set the stage. Like, things don't just happen out of thin air, out of nothing in 90s Rodriguez movies. And that really, regardless of whose script he's adapting or if it's his own writing, and that's one area where the two of them, him and Tarantino, there's, I suppose the word is overlap. They both really like to have that sort of thing, and yeah, I quite appreciate comparing the because with Tarantino there is some very careful with the Reservoir Dogs. There's very careful, like, set design, for example, and like then a lot of it is the dialogue and the performance of the dialogue. And with Rodriguez, you do have that, but you also have the editing. You have little things where a character will say or do something, and Tarantino won't so much, but Rodriguez does cut to reaction shots, and he gets so much out of the performances of them. There's so many wonderful little cutaways, and yeah, I think that more or less covers. Yeah, so other than that, the editing, there's some very it's trimmed down really well. There's not an ounce of fat on this fucking thing. There's like, and that was something not as much at this point in Tarantino's career, but more recently, I'm afraid I forget her name, but his longtime editor passed away, and since then there hasn't really been anyone to rein in Tarantino, so he just includes all the scenes he likes, which I get, but you gotta kill your darlings. And that is something that Rodriguez does often do very well. Again, at this point in his career, I have to admit I'm not super, I don't even know why, but at some point I just stopped watching the new one. I think it was because there was a point where it just seemed like, okay, I guess all he's gonna make are kids movies, which is fine. Like, if that, I admire a man who puts this much, like, who really wants to make his kids happy. I watched, let's see, the first Spy Kids and Shark Boy and Lava Girl, and I was just like, I'm sorry, if this is what he wants to make, I'm gonna have to, this is my stop. Sorry. Maybe I will at some point look at. I did take a gander at his filmography, and I could see, okay, he has made some stuff that is not kids films. Anyway, that's more recently. I mean, yeah. Tarantino likes to build, perhaps almost to a fault. Like, it gets to a point where it's like, okay, you set the scene, now just let it play out, or oh, okay, maybe that's a little bit more dialogue than we need, and yeah, Rodriguez there's this. I think it might come from his appreciation of comic books, because that's something, some people who work in the field will, writing and drawing comics will tell you. And it's also something, I read between 1999 and 2007, I read basically every comic book I could get my hands on. I do not have a count, but it must be in the hundreds. There's a tendency to, perhaps not for all, but for many artists working in comics, they want to make things count. They don't want to spend forever on anything. And, the reason is pretty simple. Like with a comic book, like at the end of the day, okay, if someone has read a certain number of pages and then they're like, I'm kind of losing interest, they can just put the comic down. Like if you're making a movie and there's a slump in the middle, a lot of people are not going to walk out during the theatrical run. They're going to be like, I'll give it a little more chance. Not necessarily so with comics. And with comics, there's also the thing of if people don't love one book, maybe they're not going to buy the next book in that run, and you just lost yourself a customer. And yeah, at this point in his career, he really applied that. They're really his movies, and that is also at times almost to a fault. Some of his movies, like with El Mariachi, he barely got it to feature length. Yeah, he likes to keep things moving, and I've seen some reviews of this where they'll say, oh, these Tarantino and Rodriguez, what's the word? They encourage each other's worst tendencies, and they should not work together. And see, I feel it's the opposite. I feel they do a good job reining each other in and actually getting each other to more like, yeah, at the end of the day, I'm a big fan of his directing. Rodriguez is not the best writer. And there are times where it is basically just like, well, it's his idea. He wants to develop it, so he writes the script. But yeah, right. Shit. I don't know how I forgot. I do think he did a pretty good job on The Faculty as well. Kevin Williamson's script. But the yeah, when Tarantino, yeah, the visuals of Rodriguez and the dialogue of Tarantino, and also just like perhaps somewhat more deep characterization, and that is something like I've heard Rodriguez himself admit, like the characters themselves are not that interesting to him a lot of the time. It is the visuals and what he can, make us like experience, more than getting into characters and such. And that is like, if you at some point sit down, just watch a bunch of Rodriguez movies, these couple of several really stand out as, okay, this was written by someone else. Yeah, I think that might more or less cover, yeah, the production value, set design, locations, costumes, and makeup are fucking amazing. This was one of the most expensive movies that he had directed and that Tarantino had written at this point in their careers. And yeah, like they actually, that's one of those things. Sometimes people are not great at handling a huge budget. You see that. Quick couple of so Mark Webb's Spider-Man movies, maybe especially that first one. Josh Trank's Fantastic Four, Fantastic, the 2015 one. Yeah, they were really, really great with a smaller budget. Well, I suppose I should say with Mark Webb, I hear I haven't watched. I'd like to watch more of his. Yeah, I do think there's a lot to love about his Spider-Man movies, and Fantastic is a movie that exists. But the yeah, Tarantino was able to write some expensive shit, and Rodriguez is able to really capitalize on having a bigger budget. And this was also something we saw in Desperado, a much more expensive movie than El Mariachi, despite being about the same character. And yeah, the money's right there on the screen. The yeah, in this movie, everything looks like the real deal, and it doesn't feel like corners were cut, even though in like on the DVD they will talk about like there we actually had to do this and that to make it work. And I think I suppose I should say so part of the idea with this movie, Tarantino, at least when they were making this movie, fucking loves the Getaway, the book. I'm afraid I forget Jim Thompson maybe. And yeah, he watched the original and he was like, "Oh, that was really good." They didn't include my absolute favorite part of the book. And then they remade it, and he was like, "Oh, now they're gonna do. Oh, they still fucking didn't do it. What the fuck?" And he wanted to do that, so yeah. I remember enjoying the 90's Getaway movie pretty well. I'd like to watch the original. I haven't. I do love a lot of movies from, let's see, I believe it's from the 1970's. A lot of great movies back then. Yeah. Yes, I do appreciate the 90's Getaway movie for not including Tarantino's favorite part, so that we got this movie instead. Yeah. Uh, yeah, so set design, locations, costumes, and makeup communicate a lot about the characters, and this might be, I don't want to give it away exactly, but there is at least one set in this movie that I think might be the best in any Rodriguez movie. I guess an argument could be made some of Tarantino's later work do top it, but yeah, I will talk about it in the thoughts sections. And yeah, amazing location scouting. They really found some places that 100% work for what they were doing, and just really memorable. That's again something you tend to get, at least at this point in his career, in Rodriguez movies. He makes it look fucking good. And yeah, the music is spectacular. Some of it is provided by I want to say they're called Tito and the Tarantulas. My wrists are too fucked to check right now. Friends of Rodriguez, and incredible musicians. Tito appears in the movie as he did in Desperado. That's also a thing. Like there's a couple of familiar faces here from Rodriguez movies from around this time. I'll go into detail in the thought sections. And yeah, let's see. There's at least one song that was written specifically for this movie. I want to say it's ZZ Top. She's Just Killing Me. And yeah, Rodriguez, like I've already talked about, there's certain things sometimes he's not the best at. When he puts together the music for one of his movies, he does tend to really knock it out the park. Like there's so much memorable music here, and he has such a knack for putting visuals to music. There's a, I guess I don't want to give away, I'm not going to get too much into detail here, but there's at least one scene here where just the way, the music is playing and we get some visuals, and it just fits so incredibly well. The cinematography and editing both just really capture, because it's the kind of thing where, so the movie Daredevil, the 2003, was accused of having essentially music videos inside. I am not sure that I 100% agree, but I can see what people mean. And you do have to be careful that it doesn't get out of hand. I don't think it ever gets out of hand here. The sound design is another area where he excels. And in this, he calls this out in the commentary track himself. He used a particular sound from, not a spoiler, in Desperado, biggest Mexican you've ever seen, the whoosh from that is used here as well, and it's just so fucking good. I'm so glad that he did cannibalize it. His words, not mine. And oh wait, shit, was he talking about, fuck, sorry, I think I'm mixing that up with something else, but yeah, he used some term. He did say that, I basically just reused it. He wasn't pretending that he came up with a brand new. There's just some of the things that you hear in this are just fucking amazing. And so the characters, it's one of those things where Tarantino is really good at having characters that feel like, that's basically just like a background character. They don't have that much screen time. But then you really look at it and it's like, there's actually so much going on here that you may not appreciate and on the first viewing, but like, yeah, it's like, okay, there's that's interesting. And these are some of my favorite of the characters he's written. And yeah, I genuinely didn't feel like there are characters that you don't necessarily like or think are good, but I've shown this movie to maybe half a dozen different people, with some of them with very different tastes. Not all of them liked the movie, most of them did, but none of them just didn't care at all about even one of the characters that actually has like dialogue and at least a little bit of screen time. And yeah, I guess that, yeah, the next, so let's talk some about the acting. So I think overall, and this is of course a little bit of a running thing, Tarantino himself, his acting, probably the weakest overall. But honestly, he does fare better here than one might think. And I do also really appreciate, like, once he knew that he was going to play the role, he could have, like, said, okay, we got to tone this down. He didn't. Like, this is his character, Richie, is very, extremely fucked up in some very, yeah. I'm not sure if I'm gonna, I might talk about it before thoughts, but otherwise, and it's not a spoiler. You find out immediately that that's the case with him. But yeah, the several well, let's see. I think I'll talk some about this was let's see. I think this might have been, certainly it was, if it wasn't his debut, it was one of his first movie roles for a Mr. George Clooney. Maybe you've heard of him. And it really opened doors for him. As you know, I've mentioned that in other videos. I guess it bears repeating. Tarantino movies tend to he's only writing, but he wrote a character for, and he was also, let's see, I believe it was his idea to get Clooney. He directed. That's still weird to say out loud, but Tarantino directed. I think he directed, or did he just write? He worked on episodes of ER. And he noted that there was, I don't know if I want to give away, I guess it might be a spoiler for that show. I haven't watched the episode they talk about, but in the commentary track they talk about, there's a particular part where, yeah, the George Clooney character does something that Tarantino felt like, okay, that proves he's right for this role, you know? And yeah, like, I've seen clips of him on ER, and I've seen, I've seen him in a bunch of stuff. Big fan. Also, really love progressives in, with platforms that use them to actually make the case for, progressive policy. Yeah. He on ER, what I understand is he has this amiable personality. There's that running joke of his acting consisted of smile, head bob, glance, repeat, and he does such a great job here of marrying that to this like sociopath. The character contains both, and this subtle shift into, because like there are times where it seems like, oh, he's in a kind of good mood. Oh fuck, shit, he's volatile, and he's got this thing where he'll look and he'll like sort of wink in this way that feels like a powder keg, like he can barely contain the violence. And every so often, of course, he doesn't. Yeah, he's so fucking good here. Like, as mentioned, I've seen him in a bunch of stuff. This is one of my favorite performances of his. It's, yeah, he does such a fucking good job. And I really admire someone who, like, I mean, if people watch this movie and were completely put off, were thinking like, oh, he's dangerous, we can't, like, think of all the times where he's played someone who is very likable after this. He's played romantic leads. Am I remember? I feel like, was it Julia Roberts? He's had like, yeah, he's played the romantic lead opposite, a glamorous, Hollywood star. So, and this is where, we first saw him in a movie, and like, this is also, he could easily have ended up completely typecast, like only doing roles like this. But yeah, I think it's just, yeah, he adds so much. There is like, there's more than you realize right away with his character. Not a spoiler. There's the first time you see a hint is very, very early on. And let's see, I think, yeah. So Harvey Keitel, by this point, bit of a regular for Tarantino. Yeah, he plays a father. You know, he and his two kids left their home, which, considering their last name, I guess was the Fuller House. Never watched that one. Did watch some of the original when I was a kid. But yeah. And there's this, like, he carries, I don't think I want to say exactly what is his deal, but he's carrying some pain. And Keitel, like, just this fucking amazing, like, he can have it right under the surface to where you can see that it's there, but he can keep it in its place until it's right for it to really come out, you know? And yeah, I think that covers him. So that brings us to the character of Kate Fuller, his daughter, Julia Lewis, in my second favorite performance of hers. Really second only to, say it with me, Natural Born Killers. Like, she's so fucking amazing in that movie. It's unreal. And here, like, just, yeah. Tarantino says on the commentary track, you know, I should say the entire thing, because yeah. Julian Lewis actually approached him from, you know, about the script, and that was at a time where there was very little to that character, but she was interested in it, and he was surprised, and so he made sure to add more. And ultimately, he says, you know, there's perhaps not as much to the character as maybe would be good, but because of her performance, she steals the movie, and I absolutely agree with him. Like, it's like I've mentioned before, sometimes you'll sit down to watch something, and there's at least one actor that's worth paying attention to, you know. And yeah, here it's Lewis. Like, there's always, she does also get some great reaction shots, but there are times where she's in the shot. She's not really the focus, and she just, with little things, just, yeah. Even if, you know, the first time I watched it, I wasn't aware that it would be good to pay attention to her, and I still really noticed, you know, yeah. And I think this might actually have been the first movie I ever watched that she's in. Yeah. And that's, yeah, her in 90s movies, you know. Yeah. God damn, it's been too long since I watched. Maybe I should watch Strange Days again. This movie makes me rewatch that movie. Just want to rewatch that movie just for her performance. But from what I recall, she did really well in that as well. Yeah, that was, you know, a movie that I watched 25 years ago, and then there was, like, I don't know, 20 years. I forget exactly when I did a video on it, but yeah, maybe 20 years or so without me watching it. I still remembered, you know, maybe especially her. Yeah. Let's see. I think that pretty well. But yeah, just her instincts are just so fucking good. And yeah, I mean, she saw what she could make of this character. Yeah, I think those are the ones that I want to give away as appearing in the movie. But yeah, everybody else, like there's a performance or two where, you know, I guess that's a spoiler. Yeah, that's all I'll say for that for now. It's really well paced. It hits the ground running, even though like at the very start it looks like, oh, it's a Tarantino movie. It's gonna, it's not gonna. We're gonna have like I mentioned, it's gonna build before we get, and then you realize, oh, we are going. I just didn't realize it right away because I was paying attention to something else. Very nicely done. And it never really slows down or stops at any point. There are times where it so easily could have, where they'll really stay on something for an uncomfortably long time, but it just works because we're in it. We're right there with them. We're feeling it too, you know. Yeah. And I think that more or less covers. Yeah, so it is more of like a crime thriller with some action than an outright action movie. That's if you watch this right after watching Desperado, this is not trying to be another Desperado. Yeah, the comedy really works. Nearly everything that is meant to get a laugh does, including on repeat viewings. I'm not going to go too much into what makes it scary. I think you should find out on your own. But yeah, when it comes to Rodriguez, sometimes it can be a little mixed. Sometimes he's in a tiny bit too much of a hurry for it to work really well for horror. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's Tarantino writing, but here he really nails it. This has some of the most just disturbing material in really either of any movie that I've watched that either of them have done. And yeah, I guess I've pretty much said for Rodriguez, and for Tarantino I've watched well, that's the thing with Tarantino. Four Rooms and a Funeral, and also Death Proof. I am still haven't watched those. I would like to. I just haven't found DVD at a price that I thought was reasonable. Yeah, I think the violence is used well. I don't want to go too much into detail, but with these two, it's not a surprise. There are times where the violence gets intense and really fucked up and such. And yeah, I think that brings us to the yeah. So I rate this 8. Really fucked up criminals trying to cross the border. Very tense. Out of 10. And so this brings us to the first part of the thoughts section. So I am going to talk about a certain part of the movie. So yeah, if you really badly want to know, or if you've already watched the movie and you want, I'm gonna somewhat review the part that I didn't want to talk about because of spoilers. I'm not going to get into too much detail about spoilers immediately. I will let you know before I do. So, the part of the getaway that Tarantino... Oh wait, shit. I guess that is a spoiler. Okay, saving that for later. So, instead, what I will say is, part of this movie, the tone changes significantly, and I really admire that it doesn't go off the rails. Like, I appreciate for some critics it did, and yeah, the way that particular bit of the movie is filmed and edited, like, it really fucking shouldn't work, but somehow it does. Because, like, there is a contrast between these two parts, but it just feels earned. And yeah, that is so yes, the special effects. On the commentary track, the two of them talk about how in the 90s, horror movies were not being made for horror fans because their viewership was taken for granted. Instead, horror movies were made to try to get people who didn't normally watch horror movies. And there is certainly some truth to that. I am fond of the you know, the Scream movies. The third less than the rest, but you know, I can sit down and watch any one of them. I do appreciate those movies are, you know, I guess, yeah, before the fourth one, they're just not as bloody and gory as slasher movies used to be. And yeah, so they wanted to make a horror movie for horror fans. And I think they fucking succeeded, you know? One of the things that really dragged down a bunch of 90s horror films. Let's see. It's been ages since I watched it. I'm not even sure I watched the whole fucking thing, so I'm not judging the movie on the whole. But what I watched, god damn it. See, I always mix them up. It's I think it's The Haunting. It's the remake of The Haunting, which, you know, I'm a big fan of the original as well as the book. I would recommend either of those over the remake from what I recall. But one of the big things is there's way too much fucking CGI. It's just... and to be clear, this is not like, you know, oh, hindsight is 2020. No. We were saying that at the time. I remember we had so many talks to, you know, when we watched the movie, we're like, oh, that's gonna be those fucking CGI effects though. They gotta wait until they're better, you know. And it's one thing that they would sometimes use them, but they overused them. They over relied on them at a time where they were simply not convincing. They were real eyesores at times. And so this movie has almost no CG, but it brings back classic fucking effects. You know, you've got like prosthetic makeup. You've got animatronic effects. You've got some other puppeteering. Let's see, what was the other? Fuck. I know there was at least one other thing that I remember. So in the commentary track, they talk about, you know, some people were like, few too many morphs, and you know, they agreed, and I agree. But yeah, it's just, it's so fucking good to see this, because like normally you got to go back to like the 80s to see stuff like this, which, you know, today's is not the worst thing in the world. You know, with streaming and such, you know, we can get pretty big screen TVs. But in 1996, you know, like, you want to watch this on a big fucking screen. You want to watch this in a movie theater, you know, and that was something they did this, and there was like, I remember there being other movies after this that, like Idle Hands was definitely more, you know, fucked up than it. I remember enjoying that movie. Maybe I wouldn't today, but it got more fucked up than 90s horror movies that came before this did, and yeah. Uh, I haven't kept up on horror movies since, but I know there have been some really fucked up ones. Yeah, more or less consistently after this in general, every so often I'll watch one on Disney Plus, for example. But yeah, um, and I think that might be about what I can really say without getting into detailed spoilers. So yeah, okay. From here on out, detailed spoilers. If you haven't watched the movie, please stop the video now and just return to it after watching. I hope I've at this point talked you into watching the movie, but yeah, full spoilers ahead. So the part of the Getaway book that Tarantino fucking loved. He in the commentary track he says, I read most of the book and I was like, this is one of the best crime books I've ever read. And then read the last bit and he was like, this is one of the best books I've ever read. And then they didn't put it in either of the Getaway movies. It was that after, they end up, let's see, shit. I'm not sure if it's called El Rey in the book, but they end up in a place that, yeah, Tarantino describes as essentially like as close to hell as we're going to get on Earth, And so that's kind of what the last, third of the movie has to be, they're almost at El Rey. Yeah, they are in hell, and shit, I guess there's a bunch of Republicans who, watch this movie and like, see, we told you Mexico was terrible. But yeah, I think they do a really solid job. It really does feel like, just and yeah. So in the commentary track they talk about, it was important that once they decided on Cheech Marin, they really felt it was important that he play all three roles that he does in the movie, because he gets Seth a little further on his journey to El Rey each time, letting them cross the border. Ultimately he tries to keep them out of the titty twister, but yeah, that's also him. And then there at the end he shows up as Carlos, and he even there the very end, one of the very last things we see, he says, Seth, it's time to go. He's not saying, oh, let's I'm getting a little impatient here, let's make the drive. No, he's saying, we're going to hell. I am taking you to hell on Earth. It's deliberate, the writing of the line and the delivery, because you'll note like Cheech, as Chet Pussy, very different performance, and Carlos, the like during the what's it called, the negotiation, that part, there's a little bit of lightness to him, but there at the end he's stone cold dead serious, and yeah, I think that, let's see, so the yeah, it's really, really impressive that this manages. So basically, we get 2/3 of, yeah, Tarantino and Rodriguez delivering a Tarantino movie. It's about what you'd expect by this point in Tarantino's career. And then, and this is something they call out in the commentary track, the bit that transitions us is essentially a musical scene. It is the dance, Salma Hayek's dance, and it really does such an amazing job because, like, genuinely, um, you don't even really notice it watching. But yeah, like, I think it's maybe 2 or 3 minutes from when she first appears to when the plot resumes, and right after that, we get fucking vampires. And yeah, when you watch it, you don't even think about the fact that, oh wow, the movie's kind of moving a bit slower now than, and it's not that there were no slow scenes, but then it tended to be like dialogue scenes, and the way it's edited, like, it doesn't feel like a music video. It does, like, I appreciate, yeah, it is essentially a musical scene. It's not that a character is singing that isn't a musician, but like, we spend several minutes watching someone dance and listening to someone sing a song, and play instruments. And let's see. I guess maybe I think we'll do some scene by scene stuff. So yeah, the opening, Tarantino's so fucking good at these openings that just, like, you find yourself thinking that, oh, this is like a conversation and then something dramatic, and this was the first time that Michael Parks was in one of Tarantino's movies, and he brought him back even though he killed him off here. Um, and this is not me like saying, oh, same actor. No, no, no. He himself has said, yeah, it's the same character, you know. Um, but yeah, uh, it's no wonder because he's so fucking good. Like, I mean, he's saying some incredibly fucked up shit. Oh, right. I guess, yeah. I meant to say in the review itself, yeah. Um, as as is more or less usual, at least was at this point in his career. Yeah, Tarantino includes a bunch of. So let's see here. It is especially racism and misogyny. There's also some ableism. Um, and again, I don't think we're supposed to really agree with the characters. Yeah, it's not really, and I appreciate that that doesn't mean that no one is going to imitate it. Um, but yeah, Michael Parks, like, yeah, he feels like a regular person. You might know someone like him. And John Hawkes opposite him as Pete Bottoms. I've seen him in a couple of other things. I don't. It almost doesn't feel fair. So to be clear, he's an amazing actor. I think he does really, really well in everything I've seen him in. It feels a little weird to say, but yeah, every time I think of him, I think of him in this movie. And that's something Tarantino is really good at, like getting, in this case, not a he is not, the performance is not his, he didn't direct it, but he did write the character. And yeah, he also just feels like a real person, and just spending, like, I don't know, 2-3 minutes just listening to two regular people just talk, and yeah, the ableism is incredibly fucked up there in that scene. And then, he goes to use the can, and then Seth and Richie walk up, and the wonderful thing is we already saw them, but they had their backs turned and we didn't see guns. We assumed they were just there, browsing. We do see them briefly before there's a shot of the inside where we see them, the four standing, the opposite end of the uh, gas station, I guess it is, right? I think. Um, yeah, we see them there, and Michael Parks walks in. We don't think too much about the four of them because they're just standing there. There's nothing particularly, different there. We pay attention to him because he's in motion. So it's such a wonderful, like, they're not just popping in out of thin air or something. And Seth just immediately, there's this ruthlessness. It's important. What the first thing we see a character do really colors the way that the audience views that character. And the very first thing we see him do is threaten four people. Pete, the Parks character, the two young women, and he even points the gun specifically at some of them and says, "Do you want this person to die?" So like we're primed to think, what a fucking monster, and the fact that the movie gets us to kind of care about him, like we don't want him to keep doing what he's doing, but like we feel some, like, what's the word, like, I'm not sure I would say we feel bad other than him losing Richie and his sadness about that, but like he does eventually reveal a sort of vulnerability, and just, yeah, there's they do such a great job on that. But yeah, and they have the conversation, and Pete insists, listen, he always borrows the bathroom. He'd be suspicious if I said he couldn't use it, and then we see Richie, and it's so wonderfully done, because we were watching Pete. Seth wasn't. He was over there by the, we saw that he didn't give any fucking signals. So immediately we know, oh no, Richie, he's imagining things, and him having a gun and the ear of Seth, because like, yeah, basically Seth is like, well, I believe my brother, these just, yeah. And ultimately, they agree, okay, just, get him out of here quick. And then they walk back and stand, going back to browsing for a very long time. They just can't make up their minds. And it looks like Parks is actually gonna be able to leave. And wonderfully on the DVD, there's a thing that has like deleted and extended scenes with commentary track, and it's one of those things, like, it feels like a backhanded compliment, but yeah, I think Rodriguez made the right choice in cutting some of these things. One of them is, we do see the call to Carlos that Seth made, and it's one of those things, like, we don't really need to see it. He said he was going to do it, and he comes back and said he did it. We don't need to see it. But one of them, and this was not really supposed to be in the movie, but it's in that particular section, and he says, yeah, I don't know, I kind of felt like maybe we wanted to use the character again, so I did a take where he pays for the beer and walks away and lives. And like, you see on like John Hawke's face, like, what's happening? Where are you not gonna have Tarantino walk up and shoot? Because like, he never accused Tarantino to walk in and shoot him. But yeah, that's Rodriguez in a nutshell. Maybe I'll want to have this character live. I'll shoot some. I'll film a bit that has them survive. But yeah, Richie, even with that little time, it's still not enough. He goes up and shoots him and insists to Seth, you know, you couldn't see it because you had your back turned. I was over there. I could see it. You know, he mouthed the words, "Help us." And at that point, Pete has had enough. And it's obviously not like tactical decision, but we can understand why he's like, "You fucking liar." And then Richie shoots him, and it's like, Jesus Christ, just stop, And it's this thing of like, Tarantino's so fucking good at writing shit like this, because like, we're like, oh my God, can the violence please stop? This is so, no, there's like, am I going to witness two innocent people just gunned down for no fucking reason in, like a minute of screen time, But at the same time, I'm sorry. I'm going to hell. I'm glad it doesn't exist. I like Gallows humor. It's funny. I'm sorry. You don't have to agree with me, but I happen to think, and I'm not alone in this, it's funny that, because like, I'm sorry, but we've all been, not, with the guns, but we've all been in a situation where someone just keeps insisting, that something is true, and eventually we're like, stop saying an obvious lie, And the fact that like that part's so relatable, but then also he gets shot right after because he called the guy like, and it's one of those things, like at the same time, like we as the audience, we're sitting there and we're like, once it happens, we can sit there and think like, don't call the guy with the gun who's shooting people a liar to his face. Like, don't do that. Like, just it's and this little thing of like, Richie keeps like Seth at first is like, I don't know if I believe it, and then he's like, get in the car, and Richie just has no. So you believe me? And Seth's like, yes, I get in the car, and Richie's like, because you didn't believe me before, and Seth's like, I believe you now. Get in the car. And it's such a wonderful thing, again, because like, the tone here balances so well, because like, when you're tackling a subject like mental illness, I understand why a lot of comedians like to go, very insensitive with it. There's a lot of, it's taboo. There's a lot of people who are very uncomfortable around people with mental health conditions. And so, it is, there's a lot of laughs that can be mined there. I'm personally not the biggest fan of it most of the time. I do think here, the fact that because it's like, some of the time it's sensitive and other times it's offensive, because like, yeah, they do actually, like, at the end of the day, like, Seth is trying to take care of his brother, and he understands that his brother sometimes sees or hears things that aren't there. And I don't know. I'm not sure if he does believe him. I think he might be saying it because he feels that, I mean, at the end of the day, they already shot, well, Richie already shot. He shot the sheriff. He did not shoot the deputy. And at the end of the day, like, what is going to be accomplished by saying you're wrong about this? They're not going to bring him back to life. So he just decides, and that is something, if you are trying to help someone with a mental health condition, the way you talk to them, especially if it's about something where they feel like someone, could be you, could be someone else, doesn't believe that they are accurately perceiving or describing facts, um, actual reality. That's a very you have to be very, very thoughtful there in how you approach it. And yeah, like at the end of the day, like Seth, he really does try. He really is doing what he can. Um, but at the same time, again, gallows humor, it's kind of funny. Like, if Richie had just accepted that Seth believed him, he wouldn't have gotten shot in the fucking hand. Because, like, he just keeps standing there. And the way that Rodriguez cuts, between Tarantino standing there saying, so you believe me? And Pete, with his bloody fingers, so, careful to, it can get really slippery, opening the thing, getting out the gun, standing up, taking him, shooting, I eat it up. It gives me life. And, yeah, both of the, yeah. Or let's see, I think, does Richie just take cover and Seth is like shooting and Pete ducks down and is hiding, and this little thing, and then, by the way, in the commentary track, they talk about like, oh, most gas stations have this, but of course, we had to film in the one gas station that didn't have that thing. I forget what the thing was, but that's, yeah, sometimes that's filmmaking, baby. But yeah, the, this wonderful little thing, and Seth doesn't even have to explain. Like, it's just, well, this is what we do in this situation, so he just, I forget what he says, but he says something like, are you ready? And Rich is like, oh yeah. And so yeah, Richie gets some toilet paper. Seth gets the I actually am not 100% sure exactly what it is, but it's flammable as fuck. They light it, throw it over, and at first it's like, ugh, that is a very painful way to die. I guess at least it's over for him. And then the motherfucker gets up, full body burn, blasting away. They're blasting, and he like lands in the popcorn and pops. It's okay if you don't find that funny, but I do think the rest of the movie is gonna be a rough ride if you don't. But yeah, that's just Jesus Christ, and it's the kind of thing where it, obviously it's less like outlandish than last third, the vampires, but it is slightly bigger than, like shit. I don't want to spoil them, but the other movies will also, like, their Tarantino likes to have something violent happen fairly early in his scripts, whether he directs them or not. And this is one of the most gruesome and fucked up and morbidly funny, um, and at the same time, again, like, yeah, genuinely, like, it makes an impression, it's, we want the violence to stop. Yeah, and they're walking out, and it's such a wonderful long take, unusual for Rodriguez. And, the camera pulls back, and we see the places blowing up right behind them. And that was a fun thing in the commentary track. They point out, okay, so typically this is a Rodriguez thing, people walking away from an explosion looking cool, but it was actually Tarantino's idea to have that, um, and yeah, it looks so fucking cool, and the entire thing, low profile. Do you understand the meaning of the words low profile? and he lists the things that it does not mean, and Richie's like, oh hey Richie, how's your hand? It hurts like a fucking son of a bitch, you know, just like, cause Richie, your hand would not hurt if you hadn't gone and fucking shot. Like Seth was saying, listen, we'll be just, you know, you don't shoot first. Let me handle this, you know? And yeah, genuinely, like, if it were up to Seth, nobody would have gotten shot there. They would have let the hostages go. You know, that is a thing. And I appreciate that. Seth does have some honor. He genuinely seemed like he was going to let every single hostage go. But they still end up dead. Except the two at the start and Kate. You know, other than that, every hostage he takes, every breath he makes. Yeah. And I know some people say, oh, you're reading too much into Tarantino. Okay, guilty. He's commenting on the violence here, you know, clearly, because like it would have been easy enough to write as no, some of them make like because the fact, like, the only hostages, you know, yeah, Kate survives, and then there's the two that they ultimately can't keep, you know, like once the shooting starts, the two hostages run away, you know. Those are the only ones who survive, because you can't completely control violence once it's unleashed by you or someone close to you. It's too chaotic. And we do see throughout the movie Seth trying to control violence. And yeah, there is very much this thing, like, it is upsetting to him, clearly. Like, I'm thinking especially of when it happens. Well, he does also care about the Fuller family, clearly. But yeah, you know, for example, when Richie kills the maid, you know, and yeah, so he lives a violent life, and he gets a lot of people killed that he didn't want to get killed, and yeah, you know, he does, like, there at the end, in the last third, there is some redemption. You know, yeah, I kind of believe that he would have just let them go. I mean, they're past they're across the border, you know. Yeah. Let's see. I think he said that they were gonna drink his treat or something like that, and then they can go, you know. But he wants to celebrate. He doesn't want to do it alone. I guess Richie is chopped liver. But yeah, if not for the violence, then they would, you know. But how did they end up inside a place that turned out to be full of vampires? Oh, right, because of Seth's violence. I appreciate that Carlos had said we should meet in there, so he was like, okay, I guess we gotta make another call and explain. Yo, Carlos, they say they won't let me in, that I have to be a trucker. Where else are we going to meet, you know? Or can we meet right outside? Maybe they do have a motorhome, you know? They can stay out there. But when he's told no, he uses violence to get his way because he has his mind set on it. And yeah, this song is 6 verses long. What can I say? Because of that, yeah, the Fuller family and his brother, most of the Fuller family, 2/3, which brings the total up to 3/4, die. And it didn't have to be that way. You know, he wasn't expecting vampires, but he keeps acting like there won't be consequences, and usually in real life those consequences do not have fangs, but you can't expect to control all the violence around you, you know? And yeah, I think it communicates that really well. Um, and I do appreciate that at the end, you know, violence is the answer to taking out the vampires, but that doesn't bring the dead back to life, you know. He really did want to take, you know, Richie to El Rey. I think it's on the commentary track that they point out El Rey was the one place on Earth where Richie would fit in. You know, that's how much of a hell on Earth it is. That he could like hallucinate something and then shoot an innocent person, you know, and that would still be okay. And that's part of, you know, they never really say how exactly it started, but I mean, I could imagine, you know, one or both brothers got into some kind of violence or some kind of, you know, robbery maybe when they were young, and then, you know, graduated to bank robbery. And yeah, Seth realized, you know, Richie, the only way, you know, because like at the end of the day, he doesn't get him committed. It's very clear if Richie were to be committed to a mental institution, it would be by force. He would not accept it. And yeah, uh, obviously in real life, yeah, don't live your life like it's a fucking Tarantino movie. In real life, if you have someone in your life that has some kind of psychological issue, you know, try to make sure they get the help they need. Um, but yeah, uh, even in real life, sometimes it's difficult to know exactly what to do. And sadly, I do get not trusting the American healthcare system. And it's maybe also this thing of like, I don't know, maybe he watched One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And it is like the idea that Richie could be free in some place. You know, it is very difficult for us human beings to give up too much freedom. You know, it makes us it's yeah, we feel like we need it, and in a way, like our spirit needs freedom. One of the many reasons we should take issue with capitalism. It takes away so much of our freedom. Let's see. I think that might more or less cover that. Let's see. I think, um, yeah, let's see. Yeah, you know, after, you know, so they drive off and then we see, you know, the TV, and they do such a pitch perfect job because, okay, so we get important exposition, you know, because like really, if not for the TV, the news segment in the movie, we wouldn't know that Richie broke Seth out of prison until they're at the border crossing and he's throwing it back in his face. And we need to know before that, because that is also part of it, you know, like Seth isn't going to abandon Richie because Richie fucking freed him from prison, you know? Um, and in addition to that, like John Saxon, like he has, I don't know, 20 seconds of screen time, and in that time he makes an impression, you know, like oh, right. Just so I don't forget, in the commentary track, they actually talked about before John Hawkes, they had wanted Tim Roth to play Pete, which I could absolutely see. I think he would have done a really fantastic job. I would like to see his take on it because I don't think it would be exactly the same. And he was very much a Tarantino regular. But at this point, but yeah, Kelly Preston, you know, um, I've liked her work elsewhere. Uh, the fuck is that movie called again? Something McGuire maybe. Uh, you Had Me at Hello. Um, Show Me the Money. You know that movie. Show me where the money is. Um, yeah, she's quite good in that. Yeah, she fucking nails the whole, like, the big smile as she's saying, several people have been murdered. And it's this thing, shit, I forget who called it. There was this song that called it out also, the thing about how, I don't know if they still do it, but there was certainly a while where yeah, women reporting news like that were, that they had to be conventionally attractive. So, Kelly Preston, she went for that as well. And they had to have this, like, big smile on their face as they're reporting tragedy. Like a lot of the news have, a lot of sad stuff. America, there's so many news channels, the competition is heavy, so they have to report on really sad stuff. And yet there is this directive to have the women smiling like that, because there's this ridiculous idea, there's so many men who feel way too comfortable telling women they should smile more. Um, yeah, so that's how that happened, and it's so beautifully satirized or replicated here. It's just so perfect. And yeah, so we see them drive, and I love the shot where, he's holding up his hand and he can see he can see his brother through the bullet hole. And duct tape is the thing that was just for ducks around it. And oh right, and before that, it opens the rear, takes a sip, spits it out in his hand, and then tape over, laying out the window, and just, yeah. And the camera pans to the back, and let's see, I think they call it Superman Vision or something like that. And apparently they fired the first special effects person because he had this idea of, like, a way more complex and expensive effect, and they were like, what are you talking about? You just have to have the little thing there, the way that it ends up looking in the movie. And yeah, it's also, it's kind of corny, but it fucking works, because, like, okay, they have a hostage in there, because it's not like it's someone's POV. It's not, the movie's not saying, oh, someone in this movie can see through metal. No, it's just telling the audience. And, like, yeah, again, I've shown this movie to like a half dozen people. None of them ever questioned it. None of them were like, what is that? Some of them were like vampires once that happened, but none of them took issue with Superman Vision. It just works, and Tarantino and Rodriguez just have a real sense for what you can put in something like this. And as they point out on the commentary track, it's not like a young, conventionally attractive waitress. No. This is a mom. Like, she looks like your aunt. This is not like, we see her and we're like, these two people, Jesus fucking Christ, what is wrong with these brothers that they, and yeah, so they yeah, they pop the trunk, um, and we get the trunk shot, another Tarantino trademark at this point, And yeah, they get her out of there, get her into the, and he says, okay, plant yourself there. And she sits down, and then she starts talking, and he's like, I said plant. Plants do not talk. Every fucking word out of Seth's mouth, and the fucking way that Clooney says it, like, there's such menace there. Like, you really feel, like, when he says, what was the thing about, you ask a question, Mr. 44 answers. Don't try to run away, because I've got 6 little friends, and they can all run faster than you. You fucking believe that he's gonna do it. If I recall, that's also the case in let's see, is it That Darn Cat? I think it's the original That Darn Cat that Tarantino got the line from, 6 little friends that can all run faster than you. And as again, like, who fucking references That Darn Cat in a goddamn vampire splatter gore horror movie? Like, what the fuck? It's just, I fucking love these decisions that he makes. Like, it's one thing if he, like, said, you know what, I want to reference that line, I'm gonna make a comedy too. Like, if you have no idea what That Darn Cat is, it's been a long time. I think I watched it like 20 years ago by now. But yeah, it's a comedy. There's a cat that does cute and funny things, but there is also a guy threatening with a gun, yes, but, like, it's not a Tarantino movie, but just, yeah. Let's see. And um and yeah, right. We again have Seth say, you are, if you do as I say, you're gonna live through this. He said that at was it Benny's World of Liquor, which he said you should maybe be Benny's World of Blood, now that they've shot so many people there. He says it to her. He says it to the Fuller family. So when he says it to the we have the setup at Benny's. We have the reminder with the waitress, maid, something like that. I'm sorry, I forget. I have nothing but respect for service workers. You work extremely hard. You deserve tips. You deserve a living wage. You should be treated significantly better. But I'm afraid I forget exactly which service work job this woman had. But yeah, that's the reminder. And the payoff is when he says it to the Fuller family. Because at that point, we're sitting there like, oh no, they're gonna die too, And he keeps insisting that he can control the violence. He's so certain that it will end up working out. Yeah. Also worth noting, in the original script, let's see, did everybody, I think everybody survived the titty twister. And then Tarantino was like, no, I think it would be more exciting with victims. And I agree. Oh my fucking God, I can hardly imagine this movie without them dying. I'm sorry. Like, I would never, obviously in real life, death is horrible. But in fiction, as long as, it depends on how you handle it. But yeah. I find that I care about everything. And that's, again, short of a half dozen people, all of them cared for the deaths of the Fuller family and Richie, even though we think Richie is a monster. Not because of his mental illness, but because he kills people, Let's see. Oh, right, the pill popping in the car was also great. It spits out something. It just, yeah. But yeah, and he says, you just stay right there. Richie, I'm going to go, call Carlos, and as soon as he walks out the door, Richie, oh, right, and shit, is that, no, yeah, it's still, and yeah, as soon as he walks out the door, Richie, gets in bed, and talks to, and then we get the Tarantino shot through the doorway, and he asks, "You want to watch TV with me on the bed?" And I mean, at this point, like, what is she gonna say? No. Like, and we immediately get a bad feeling, and that's also where the shots through the doorways work so well. Like, we just get this bad feeling, something, this is not gonna go well, and he even asks her to take off her shoes, because of, I don't know if I think is it a good thing or a bad thing, but Tarantino put his own real life foot fetishism into the character. To be clear, there's nothing wrong with foot fetishism, or really, like, there's a couple of fetishes that I don't know. I understand why they make some people uncomfortable. I'm not the right person to say, race play, for example. Not for me to talk about. That is up to, but by and large, when it comes to sex, as long as you get consent, ideally enthusiastic consent, keeping in mind consent can be withdrawn at any point, including during. Yeah, other than that, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong. With that said, so I'm not talking about real life fetishes, but the fact that he, the foot fetishism with Salma Hayek, that felt gratuitous. But I appreciate, it's like, there's other movies that they're like, Tarantino is always, he always has these other um, movies and such that he brings in, and that's one of the things. There are movies like this that where it gets that gratuitous. Let's see, but yeah, and the way he asks her, he sounds like a child asking for a play date or something. It doesn't sound like this dangerous monster. And I think, is that when we see? Yeah, I think the very next. Yeah. Then we have the yeah, we meet the Fuller family, the Fuller, and yeah, we get the, immediately we get the sense, okay, this is like, they can be happy a lot of the time. This is a happy family, and yeah, they talk about, he's like, oh, motorhome is all well and good, but sometimes you just need a bed. We'll find a place. And yeah, they're talking about, is this we got to find we can't sleep at a really unpleasant place though. And yeah, Scott goes to use the bathroom. He's also one of those, like, they do a pretty good job making sure he has, like, he's the one who, during the border crossing, and I'll get to it, but I just wanted to say, yeah, I think they did a good job making sure he had enough to do. Yeah, Kate, I wouldn't have minded if she had more to do, but yeah, I already mentioned, she steals the movie. And yeah, Keitel, so fucking good. I don't have much more to add to what I've already said about him, but yeah, Scotty leaves, and then yeah, she asks him, this whole thing, and we find out, his wife, their mother, the kid's mother, not his own mother, thankfully. He's not that Southern. Died, and yeah, he there's that great monologue about, am I a fool? And the thing about, so you're just gonna say fuck him? I did not say fuck him. And the thing about, oh hey, the Mr. Called and said, maybe you could come back and still be the pastor. And he calls the guy Ted, because, like, he's friends with him. They're on a first name basis. She's, well-raised Southern girl, so she's going to refer to a grown man as Mr. Possibly not her father. That may be dad or daddy, but, other men are Mr. And and I really appreciate the distinction. Do I believe in God? Yes. Enough to be a pastor? No. And let's see, the thing about, what would mom say? Mom doesn't say anything. Mom's dead. And that is, some people, those are two of the reactions, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, it bears repeating. There is no wrong way to grieve. I guess it's like a Reese's in that way. If you feel you need to like, ideally try to avoid destructive or self-destructive acts. Sadly, some people do get into those when they're grieving. But other than that, what you're doing is not wrong. And if there are people telling you that you're wrong for doing it, try to, if necessary, cut those people out of your life. But you're not grieving wrong. But two of the common ways is, some will say, well, we have to do things the way the person that died would. And another way is to say, no, we're not going to do things that way, They're both processing. And then, Seth comes back and Rich, talks to Rich. And the thing, what were you doing? Sightseeing. What did you see? Cops. And the way that he realizes that the maid isn't there is because he has one piece of food too many. Because like he was about to hand it to her. You gotta. And unlike with Nazis. And she's not sitting where I told her to plant herself. And he walks up and he sees it, and the way that it's so wonderful because it's handled in such a different way from all the violence once we get to the vampires. The vampires, it's like big and in your face. And here, like they show like just a couple of frames of it, just enough that we know what it is. We don't have to see it up close, And the camera slowly moving in, and the shot also gets closer on the, of her. And Richie says, as soon as you left, she completely changed. And he keeps insisting it's her fault. Even, when Seth is like, is this my fault? And that again, like, he hallucinated, and suddenly it felt right to him to kill her. And he can't, like, Seth is literally standing there, like, questioning him, and he really struggles to understand, and it's one of those things, like, we knew that it was going to go bad, but at the same time, like, what the fuck was he going to do? Like, well, he's the hostage, I guess, and that again brings us back to him trying to control things through violence rather than abandoning violence, because, like, at the end of the day, if he releases her somewhere and then drives away from where he released her, by the time she tells anyone that she was a hostage from them, they're going to be some distance away. I'm not in the hostage taking business, so maybe my advice isn't the best, but just, it's so well done, and I really appreciate that we don't see the act. We don't even really see the aftermath, just glimpses. And I really love Seth's little talk there, because that is like, Richie is just going too far here, and so he asks, do you think this is who I am? And he lists out things he doesn't do, and then he says, this isn't how it is done. Because in his mind, there are rules for how to live a violent, dangerous criminal life, endangering innocent people. And Richie isn't following those rules right now. It's not the fact that they're engaging in violence. That's every day now. But this is the wrong way to do it, And I think there is some empathy. It's in my opinion, a mix of empathy and like just thinking tactically, because this is not, this is also not a good idea to do. But the fact that his empathy does not go so far that he would say that they shouldn't do any violence, yeah. I think that does pretty well. Let's see. Yeah, so they drive up to the place, and I have to say I don't think I've seen the guy in anything else, but they point out in the commentary track, apparently they know him well from other stuff, but they point out in the commentary track, he makes a fantastic mean old bastard. He really does. And this thing of like, yeah, Seth goes up, and at first he does just ring it once. And an argument could be made that he doesn't give that much time, but like you'd expect there to be a call of coming once he rings it once. But then he rings it twice. And again, and again, and he picks up the bell and like slams it into the desk because he's so used to getting his way through violence. Like this again, you're not thinking very clearly. Like if you start like breaking things at this hotel, you're not, such as the bell or the desk, by slamming it, you're not going to get to stay there. He's gonna call the cops, and you're gonna be, like you said the words low profile, remember? But powder keg, as mentioned earlier. And I think that pretty well brings us to the let's see. Yeah, so and the we're a fucking room. And so they get it, and yeah, they go over all the things that Richie wishes it had, but it doesn't. And yeah, he says, it's got 4 walls and a roof, and that's all we're looking for. And yeah, they yeah, not long after the Fuller family drive there, and yeah, they're the kids are talking about this is a horrible place, but yeah, Jacob has this, he really wants this bed. He's gonna wish he didn't. And I do think they do a good job of sometimes you end up with a movie where it feels like, oh wow, they're kind of victim blaming, aren't they? Really, that is not the case here. Like clearly none of these people actually deserved the violence. Before we run into vampires, other than maybe Richie and the RV. Other than that, none of the violence is deserved, and they do such a good job making that clear. And that's again something Tarantino can be really, really good at. I think that is one of the things Tarantino makes sure that we care when there's violence, whereas Rodriguez, when he's writing, it's more that it looks cool. We don't feel that much when there's violence a lot of the time. Yeah, I think that brings us nicely to so yeah, they arrive, and Seth is right there drinking, and we see the look on his face, and it's like he had an idea. And yeah, so Jacob is annoyed that Scott, that's it, not Cyclops. Scott is not answering the door. He continues practicing the electric guitar. I think you should count your lucky fucking blessings that the kid is willing to put on the headphones for that, because there's a lot of kids who would not do that. But yeah, and Richie manages to convince about Ice Bucket, and gets out the gun. Seth walks in. We had another great. I swear I'm not going to quote every single fucking Seth line, but yeah, it's called a punch. Is great, and then we have the thing about you don't look Japanese, and Jacob says neither does he. He looks. Oh shit! I'm sorry. Okay, I feel like getting it wrong is worse than yeah. So I'm sorry, but he corrects and says the actual ethnicity or national. Yeah. Moving on before I dig myself deeper. He corrects him. And yeah, Seth saying, well, pardon me, all to hell is funny, but at the same time, it's also like, you could have just said East Asian, right? Seth, like, you didn't have to make a guess and then get, like, annoyed when you're corrected. Like, if you don't want to be corrected about something like that, just don't guess at it, You could also just ask. But yeah, the casual racism, which again I don't think is depiction does not equal endorsement. I think that brings us to yeah, and Kate. Oh God. So the moment that because this is the first time that Richie sees her. Seth saw her before at the RV through the window. But this is the first time Richie sees her, and she's, in like a bikini, and this thing of like, he throws, what is it, like the keys maybe to the RV, something like that, because like normally you would. He forgot for a second that the hand was fucked. Again, a bit of funny, morbid humor. Obviously in real life, don't make fun of someone who has a physical disability. Let's see. I think I feel like it's less that it's not. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm like I'm really. I swear I'm not trying to be like an apologist. I read it less as like laughing at someone who has a disability, and more as laughing at the dangerous guy. But yeah. And so, he bends over to pick it up, and, the camera, we almost get like a POV shot of that, and then even the thing, she turns to him and says the line, and like the way, like Juliette Lewis does such a pitch perfect job there, because that's a line that's like awkward, and like, how do you make that work? But yeah, like because the fact that it is like framed as like a question, a request, essentially, like she politely requests he perform a specific sexual act, even says please, and he's like, yeah, sure, and Seth has to snap him out of it, and it's just, I don't think it's accidental that it specifically is pussy eating, because there's so many fucking men out there who, the moment they see a woman, they just think, if I make sure she knows that I would eat her pussy, she's going to let me. And it's like, listen, it's great that you're willing to, but like under quite a lot of circumstances. In many countries and cultures, it's the vast majority, in fact, do not open with offering a sex act, no matter how, generous, it is perceived to be. Just like, yeah, treat her as a human being, not as just a sex object. Quite a few women Really, really hate that. Understandably so. Let's see. And we have the first time that Jacob verbally puts up a fight. And this is a thing where in the commentary track they talk about how they hate in a lot of these hostage movies how the hostages don't really resist. And see, I've always felt that like it doesn't make that much sense for them to resist. Like what do they think they're gonna accomplish? They're just likely to get killed. Like you can't psych out a hostage taker like that, just but it's a movie drenched in machismo, as Tarantino and Rodriguez movies tend to be, especially around this time. And I do think they find a balance that works, because here first he just says, no, you are not taking my family hostage. And later he also has some words and eventually even a punch to offer. But yeah, so they get in and they drive to the border checkpoint, and they do such a great job. We have these little things building. So we all understand, okay, if the geckos are discovered, I mean, they're probably going to try to shoot their way out of there. A lot of people are going to die. So we really don't want that to happen. And there might even be a part of you that thinks, would it be so bad if they managed to get across the border? Like, they just want to get to El Rey. They'll release the hostages, all this stuff. And, Seth says, okay, showtime. So do you know what you're going to say? And Jacob's like, no. But, he appreciates he wants this to work. And so, Scott sits next to him, and the other three are in the bathroom. So we understand how all the pieces are placed, and we see there's dogs, and we see like people have to get out of their car, and everything's thoroughly searched. There's another motorhome that's being searched. They're going in there. They're bringing the dog. All this stuff. So like it feels like they do such a good job. It borders on like Brian De Palma, honestly. Like all the elements are in place, and we feel like, how could they possibly get out of this? And the way that nothing comes out of nowhere in the entire scene, it's all elements that are set up. And yeah, you have the thing, so what's your purpose? Just me and my son, and I'm taking him to see his first bullfight. And in the bathroom we have the thing about Richie, as usual, being anxious, and we can tell this is going to end with violence. This time it's not guns. Seth knocks him out and then lies about it. But yeah, Seth tries to calm him down and accidentally slips up because of all the tension. It's tension and suspense through the air, through the roof, through the air. What the fuck? And he accidentally says, "As long as you don't act like a fucking nut." And he said, no, I just meant be cool. Yeah, you meant that, but you also meant the other thing. And that again is something, if you're talking to someone who has some kind of mental health condition, don't imply that they are like, he specifically said nut. There are other words he could, if he had just said something like, you will have to behave yourself or something, but no, he specifically used, and a sanist slur. And he brings up the breaking Seth out of prison, and he makes noise, and Seth is like, what the fuck are you doing? The cops are right out there. And he's like, no, fuck the cops, we're gonna have this conversation. because like in his mind, this is the only thing that's important, and yeah, um, you know, Border Patrol Cheech Marin, wants to check out, and like Jacob said, no, I'm sorry, I just forgot. It's me, my son, and my daughter. She's in the bathroom, and he goes in to see because, like, yeah, it sounds like a struggle, signs of a struggle. This is the kind of thing they're supposed to be on the lookout for, They are well aware that there are a bunch of criminals going across the border because, let's see, I forget what it's called. No, shit. What's it called again? Yeah, they have there's no extradition, that's one of the reasons Mexico is a popular destination for a lot of criminals who want to escape the law. Yeah. And let's see. Then the God damn it, I gotta speed this up, or this is gonna take for fucking ever. I've been talking for over 2 hours now. There's just so fucking much to say about this movie. I fucking love it. Anyway, yeah, we have the yeah. So he goes in, and yeah, this really perverted bit where yeah, she is sitting there, and he like peeps, and just yeah. But it is the kind of, it is purposefully gross. We're, again, not supposed to be, like, thinking, we're not supposed to be on his side. And, yeah. Once he sees her there, he's not thinking about, the, let's see, it's like a bath area, it's a place where you could take a shower, or maybe a bath, something like that, He's not thinking about that anymore. He's thinking about her. And she says, do you mind? Shut the fucking door, please. So, yeah. Very, very nicely done on that. So, yeah, they get across the border. And then we see Seth, now that he feels like, oh, this is actually going to work. We're getting there, Now he's not threatening them. He said, you are all in my cool book. Let's drink together, and all this, like, he's completely different, and they do such a great job on that. It's so pitch perfect. The way that genuinely, like, he doesn't really want this. He just thinks, like, violence is such it comes so naturally to him. He thinks he can control it, and he thinks that it's the only way, which of course doesn't excuse the horrible acts. Like, they underline, they don't make him look heroic when he engages in violence, other than the vampire. The entire pussy monologue is fantastic. If no part of it grosses you out, I don't want to be alone with you in a dark alley. I mean, at least the last little part of it has to be, yeah, the bestiality references, like, Jesus fucking Christ. And it is obviously exaggerated version, but, they are hearkening to these kinds of really sleazy places. And that is part of the point. Like, it's supposed to come across as just this incredibly fucked up place. And at first we think it's just like, sexually, but it turns out to also be, vampires. But yeah, they all, yeah, he punches Chet, and then, Richie kicks him while he's down, and then, they get in there, and again, the scene setting is just chef's kiss. And is one of the fancy chefs, like one of the ones from The Bear. Just the sweeping shots of the inside of the titty twister, which, by the way, and I'm sorry, but I have to bring this up, in censored versions, which, like, how the fuck do you censor this movie? This is like, there was that joke on Mad TV some years back about, like, that Christian Network's version of Sopranos, being like 4 minutes long. The censored version changes Titty Twister. It covers up the breast and changes Titty Twister to Kitty Twister. Now, I'm sorry. I appreciate that maybe they're saying like, oh, like kitty, like a weird way to refer to pussy, maybe, or I don't fucking know. Maybe cat women hang out there. I don't know, but Kitty Twister sounds like something that a serial killer to be would be doing. So I think that's significantly worse. And it's funny because like Titty Twister, isn't that also like a thing bullies do? So like, I don't know, middle school students are probably have probably heard the term Titty Twister. It's not gonna, warp their mind to, yeah. Moving on. Danny Trejo, amazing as always. This has some of the best Trejo, in my opinion, in what I've seen. I appreciate there's stuff of his I haven't seen. He, let's see. He, Cheech Marin, Tito, and Salma Hayek were regulars for Rodriguez at this point. But yeah, this has some of the best, like him, pouring liquor and then drinking it right in front of them just to say, nope, you're no way, His fucking monologue introducing Santanico Pandemonium is so fucking good. Like when he goes, lowly dog, it's amazing. It's so good. And on the commentary track, they also, Rodriguez points out that Tarantino makes up Spanish words, and he's like, there's apparently a movie called either that or something very similar, and he like partially misremembered, or maybe the original title was wrong, but he says, yeah, I like your made up Spanish. And there's also a time where he, someone should be saying puta, instead they say punta, which doesn't mean whore, but I'm sorry. I'm only translating. I don't like that word, but translating. But punta means point, So, yeah. Like a period, I think, But anyway, yes. Full stop. The Santanico Pandem should be Satanica instead. But yeah, and the conversation, and yeah, the bouncer comes up, and the thing with, I'm gonna count to, I'm gonna count to three. No, I'm gonna count to three, because he just can't handle not having control over the violence. And I think in his mind, like, it feels neurotic to me. I think he is neurotic about it. He thinks that if he doesn't control the violence, then Richie is going to just shoot a bunch of people, or possibly end up hurt himself, And I appreciate there is it's not a completely unreasonable thing to think, but there certainly are times where he goes, like the mean old bastard bit, for example, him ringing the thing so aggressively. That's not proportionate, to the situation. But yeah, yeah, Jacob saves it by pointing out, well, I mean, I technically am a truck driver, license is, which, like, yeah, he is technically correct, the very best kind of correct. And yeah, they sit down and drink, and yeah, Kate struggling and slamming down, just, and the thing with, Kate, you're gonna drink. I'm not drinking. I'm not 21. That means yes. Which is also such a, like, I mean, yeah, technically she didn't say that she didn't want to. She said that it's not legal for her to do. And, like, you're talking to Seth Gecko. Whether or not it's legal has no bearing on whether or not it's going to happen if he wants it to happen, Like, I'm not saying it definitely will happen, but whether or not it's legal doesn't enter into that. That's not part of the consideration at all, you know. But yeah, so he let's see, and then we have, I think, what is the next thing? Yeah, the thing with, you know, Jacob. Oh, so you don't drink? I drink, but I'm not drinking now. And the thing with, you know, can I ask you a question? Are you such a fucking loser? And that entire bit, like, just pitch perfect, you know. And Seth being like, what did you call me? And he's like, I didn't make a statement. And just, yeah, fucking pitch perfect. Such fantastic dialogue written by Tarantino, directed by Rodriguez, and performed by just, like, such talented actors, you know. And yeah, he insists, okay, we are gonna drink, because Jacob applied reason, and he did kind of get, not physically but verbally violent. You know, he, like, pokes at an insecurity, and he's so honest, and he's taking charge of the situation, you know. And that again is like, there's a measured element to it, you know. He's not there's a lot of things he could be saying or doing that he doesn't. And he is kind of right, you know. And it is like he's sitting there thinking, why am I stuck with this fucking, like, he's gonna go off any second, you know. He could get us killed over nothing, you know. You won, and you can't even see it. And it is like toxic masculinity, you know, not being able to accept even the tiniest little loss, you know. I mean, these days, like, Trump whined about, like, oh, you know, the UN is sabotaging me. People should be arrested because of the escalator. Like, Jesus Christ, just walk up the fucking stairs. I mean, I'm sorry, but there's children who would understand. Oh yeah, this escalator doesn't work. Let's just walk up the stairs. Whilst Trump is also getting people deported, killed. Just, yeah. Innocent people getting deported. Some sent to a country that they don't come from. Some sent to fucking concentration camps. Some of them dying for the crime of not being legal citizens, which Republicans have made it exceedingly difficult to become. Some of them were literally arrested whilst trying to become legal citizens. And, you know, they're productive members of society. Remember all the protests, how many people were fucking angry about it, and all he cares about is these tiny little personal things that he thinks, like, he thinks the world is out to get him, and it's like, Jesus Christ, dude. So that's one example. And yeah, then we have, you know, Salma Hayek. And this is one of those cases where, so I think Rodriguez gets something really impressive out of Hayek every time that they work together. I have to admit, I remember less about the faculty, but, you know, in Desperado, there is this, like, there's this thing going on where it's almost like, you know, girl next door, and very, like, she understands the world around her, you know. She gets it, you know. He likes those. She's somewhat reminiscent of I want to say her name is Domino, very fitting, in the El Mariachi, you know. In shit, almost had Once Upon a Time in Mexico, you know. We have some, yeah. She steps up to, you know, there's more, like, she gets to be more of an active participant during action, more like that she helps resolve things rather than just running away with him or that sort of thing. And this is one of the best, one of the ones where he gets the most out of her. part of it is the fact that in this, the faculty is an exception, but other than that, in these, he tends to emphasize her conventionally attractive looks. Um, he does point out in the commentary that she's very short, so he likes to try to film her from low angles to make her look bigger and more impressive. But this is one where the fact that she has this very mysterious thing going on is really utilized to great effect, because she turns out to be a fucking vampire, and she is one of the most memorable of the vampires, despite dying almost immediately. We don't spend very much time with her, but yeah, you look at her face, her eyes, and it does feel like very mysterious, when she plays that up, I mean, and yeah, in each of these movies, Rodriguez tries to have her do something that she is initially uncomfortable with. Let's see, I think, was it maybe The Heights in Once Upon a Time in Mexico? Here it is the snake. She was terrified of snakes, and he managed to convince her to take the role, and so she got therapy to get over the fear. And I'm sorry, but when you watch the movie, would you ever guess that this woman was afraid of snakes? She looks like she, there's that Simpsons episode where he gets super one with nature, and everywhere he goes, the these birds are just perched on his shoulder. You feel like that. She goes everywhere with these snakes. And she does also, once they get her into vampire form, she has this very snake the teeth and the entire head. Very much. I am not gonna make a fool of myself by saying what I think it is, because I think I might be wrong, but it is a very specific snake that they modeled that after, and yeah, the this musical scene getting, oh, I guess shit, I already said what I have to say about that earlier in the video. Yeah. But yeah, in the commentary track they talk about, they couldn't really choreograph dance for her because you can't choreograph a snake. So they just told her to just move with the music, And the song played on set was not the one that is playing in the final scene. So she's dancing to other music, and he had to do, there's a somewhat similar in, I guess I don't want to, okay, in another movie of his, there's a similar thing going on. But yeah, and also just the fact, she's there, and she waves the big cape around a couple of times, and then suddenly there's a snake. This kind of cheesy magic trick. Covering something and then removing the covering, and look at that, something appeared. Just wonderful. Just close-up magic kind of, yeah. And eventually the snake comes off. She removes the head piece, goes over, and Tarantino gets his little moment that he, again, at least he did also write the character as just fucking horrible. Right, and that pretty much brings us to the vampires. I just realized I completely fucking forgot. Okay, I'll speed through it because time. But great when they are talking in the RV as they're getting closer to the border. Seth entire, he's just sitting there. He's looking through the wallet that he got off Jacob, and he's like, oh. You're and the thing with fucking over the IRS, which I don't know. Don't all conservative Christian churches fuck over the IRS? I think they should have to pay taxes if they are gonna get involved in politics, because that was kind of the fucking agreement. You know, you stay out of politics, we don't collect taxes from you, which is also absurd because some of these places rake in the dough and then whine about not having enough private jets because, you know, if you fly commercial, there are demons, you know, like you right now sitting in the pew. I'm begging you to give me money because you're a demon, and I would not fly with you. I'd rather fucking worsen climate change. Pieces of shit. But he asks if he's the real McCoy, and apparently, I don't know if this is true or not, but there's at least an urban legend that there used to be, like, there's you know, I'm Danish. There was a Danish subtitle track, apparently, where the person didn't realize that the real McCoy was not his name. It's like a way to say, are you the real deal? So he, you know, they translated the line as if Seth is asking, are you Mr. McCoy? And he says, yes, I am Mr. McCoy. And the article I read that talks about this noted that somehow the subtitle didn't realize nowhere else does anyone refer to him as Mr. McCoy. And he, in fact, has clearly, you know, we get his full name, and it's not McCoy. That's not the real McCoy, that subtitle track. But the let's see. Yeah, and them talking about Jacob's wife's death, and the way that Seth, like at that point, he's still kind of callous. Like he I guess in his own way, sort of expresses empathy because, you know, he says those acts of God, you know, stick it in and break it off, you know. But later, he seems genuinely sad that these people are in danger and dying. You know, he seems genuinely sad. Jacob's imminent turning and thus, you know, obviously demise. They're going to kill him. They're not very tolerant of vampires, but yeah, they yeah, you know, ultimately Jacob is like, you know what, I'm done opening up to you. You know, and then Seth like snaps at him like, okay, fine, I guess we're done getting to know each other. You're going through the guy's wallet and being really rude and like essentially interrogating him about this recent tragedy. Like, it just, but he genuinely just can't, like, if he's not dominating a situation, often with violence, he just doesn't know how to be. Like, I get that, you know, hostage, you know, there's a power imbalance, but like, you could, like, I'm sorry, no matter what situation I was in, if someone told me this horrible thing about, you know, their partner just dying, you know, what was it, like 6 hours slow death, like, I'm sorry, at that point, I'm going to say, I am so sorry for your loss. That is, that's horrible. Yeah. But yeah. Meanwhile, Richie, ogling Kate, and we see his face, and there's the thing, you know, the biggest Mexican you've ever seen, whoosh, over every time that he gets bad ideas in his head, you know. And these close-ups and the way his eyes stare in this really uncomfortable way, you know. But yeah, POV as he, you know, again, for Tarantino's benefit, the feet. Julia Lewis doing some excellent toe acting, underrated. And he asks, you know, hey, did you mean what you said? You know, the thing you asked for, because I'll do it. And she's sitting there like, the fuck, you know, just wonderful little, yeah, trying to figure out what the fuck is he talking about, you know, just, yeah. And the little thing, you know, and he says, we'll talk later, and her like, it's amazing, yeah. Because it's one of those things, like, you could imagine that a reaction that big might, like, lead to violence, and we are worried about him doing something horrible to her, which I also really appreciate the movie doesn't go there. You know, we don't need to see that, and she does, like, she's traumatized and she lost her family and all this, but she does end up with a little bit of money to start of a life, and she ultimately, like, it doesn't go further than him staring at her, he never lays a finger on her. I think that might, yeah, and the bite guard, and on the commentary track they talk about, several of them use a bite guard, except for George, who apparently doesn't have the, what did they say, angst or something like that. Yeah. Yes. So that brings us to the plot twist. So okay, yeah, I'll just briefly go over. So the couple of things leading up to it, so we have the thing of, Richie, look alive. 3 of them, and he does a little wink and a little twitch. And Chet Pussy, J'accuse, and they try to hold down, and Richie manages to shoot one of them, and then I think he's called Charlie Razor, Danny Trejo's character, stabs right in the hand, which, like, Richie just got to the point where he wasn't, like, constantly feeling intense pain because of the hand injury. And again, I'm sorry, but in a morbid way, it's kind of funny. Like, I don't know, I guess Charlie didn't want to put too many holes in him, maybe. But yeah. Yeah, so he tears out the blade, stabs it back in the table, and shoots. And then we get the laughter from Chet Pussy, and it's like, you think that was funny? And then they shoot, and then we have this wonderful thing of, like, the reason that Richie got bit was that Seth emptied his gun into Chet Pussy, which was completely unnecessary. He could have saved him. But I want to briefly note, so the big turn here, which I think it's already been pointed out. Was it? I watched Maven of the Eventide's video years ago. I'm afraid I don't remember that much of it anymore. It was really good. I thought she did really great analysis. But I remember one thing she noted was the fact that the sequels, and I'm not currently planning on doing videos on them. I watched them 20 years ago. I was not a fan. If they both felt like such a downgrade from this one. There was a guy who literally offered, he was saying he would give me both movies on VHS. Back then I had VCR. I don't even know if my VCR works anymore. And I said no. I was nice about it. Don't worry. I didn't, like, insult him or something. But yeah. The sequels don't really do the crime part. They focus entirely on the vampires, And I agree with her that that's a loss. I think, honestly, I would like more movies like this. Not really sequels. I don't know. I mean, what are you going to do here that is, like, I think, Planet Terror does something interesting where, it feels like a spiritual successor. It's obviously not a sequel. But it has a bigger cast. It has an ensemble cast, more like, comic booky characters, really, and yeah, I think that that is interesting. And I also just like this idea of, like, let's make movies where, maybe half and half, maybe 2/3, 2/3 and then 1/3, but have 2 movies in one, essentially, because it kind of fucking works. Like, it feels like this grindhouse thing of, like, I don't know, I guess there's a couple of missing reels, but fuck it, because it changes genre so utterly and completely. It is just a different genre, but it's happening to the same characters. And yeah, I don't know how Rodriguez does it, but he really does make it work with this switch. And I appreciate it didn't work for everyone. I saw, I believe it was a rotten review. The summary was, imagine watching two movies from different parts of the rental store or something like that, you know? And I forget if it was rotten. It might have been fresh because, like, I don't know. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that really works. It's just, yeah, you know. I mean, listen. I think I'm glad that the last third of this movie is not attached to the end of a Pixar movie, for example, because I think that would be really fucked up. Because Pixar movies are movies you can take your kids to, unless you're Snoop Dogg, in which case it's very scary. But honestly, I think that everything that needed to be said on that um, has been said by others. I remember Nando V Movies did a video on it, and I want to say Samantha Lux also did a video on it. So, but the fact is, this movie, like, I'm sorry, but if you don't understand what you're in for when you see a full body burn popcorn feast, I don't know what to tell you. Like, okay, maybe you didn't want vampires specifically. Maybe you would have liked for it to stay realistic. But you can't exactly pretend like it wasn't always a story of violence, you know? Um, yeah, I forget if I have seen other movies. I guess I shouldn't mention it, even if I did remember them. But I honestly, let me know in the comments. Preferably not too many spoilers. But if there's other movies that do this, you know, have a change part way, you know, and they did eventually do, you know, with Grindhouse. I already mentioned I didn't watch the Death Proof one, you know, but yeah, I understand that when they showed them in movie theaters, they showed both movies back to back, you know, like a Grindhouse, and they get some of that effect here very nicely on them. So I mentioned in the review itself, yeah, Rodriguez borrows some of Tarantino's style for direction in the first two-thirds. I didn't say that there, but that is obviously what that was the part I was especially referring to there. For for the last third, he goes to John Carpenter again, and I don't know if I think it worked in The Faculty. That one might have been a bit too on the nose, but I think sometimes it really works incredibly well when he evokes Carpenter. You know, he does it in Planet Terror as well. I already did video, more than one video, at least one video on that entire movie, so I'm not going to get too much into it here. But yeah, um, the writing's on the shirt. I don't mean wall, I mean shirt. Precinct 13, it's right there on, God damn it, I keep forgetting, Scotty's shirt. This movie is Assault on Precinct 13 plus vampires. You know, Carpenter had just made the movie Vampire. I'm pretty sure that came before this. It was 90s, certainly. You know, James Woods killing vampires. One of the Baldwins being a creep in the movie, too. And, yeah, what is that particularly... I mean, be honest. Did you even... Were you sure that I was talking about the movie, or maybe, I don't know. I forget if all of them have been creeps at one point or another, but when I say a Baldwin being a creep, yeah. Uh, yeah, so yeah, and we've got the Thing reference. They even, like, in the deleted scene, you get to see it, but apparently Rodriguez ended up thinking it was a bit too much, and I guess I kind of get it. And there is a lot already. The movie's already very gory and violent, you know. I've only seen it as in the deleted scenes section, so I can't say. It's possible I would think it was too much if I saw it in the movie itself. But yeah, at one point in the deleted scene, we do actually see the mouth in the stomach actually bite a guy's head off. You know, in the final movie, we can see the stomach, but we don't actually mouth, but we don't actually see it in action, which obviously does make it less gruesome. And that might also be where he got the full body burn for the start, but that might be a reach. But yeah, you know, Assault on Precinct 13, you have someone trying to get to them, and they have to fight them off with what they have available, you know. And they emit in the commentary track, you know, are these really vampires? They kind of act more like zombies. And I'm sorry, it might have been accidental, and I'm trying not to read too much into it, but it's hard to get much more John Carpenter than having something that isn't technically a zombie, basically, you know, after a fashion being a zombie. You know, there's so many of Carpenter's movies where someone is like not referred to as a zombie, but we watch it and it's like, well, that's a fucking zombie. What are you talking about? I'll just very briefly note, fantastic work by K&B, and so glad that Greg Nicotero, the N in K&B, you know, Kurtzman, Nicotero, Berger. Berger is a person, not the food. They're incredibly gifted, and I'm so glad Greg Nicotero started directing. I think he's done. I'm early in season 5, but so far I'm really loving his work on The Walking Dead, directing as well as effects work. Now, I think that might just about cover. But yeah. Right, and I mean, I'm not sure if John Carpenter, I haven't watched all of his movies, I'd like to. I'm not sure he ever did a movie that changed genres partway through, but certainly, like, he did cover, I think, pretty much every genre. Like, he actually did do a biographical, you know, he did an Elvis biopic, you know. I don't know if that counts as history, if that's far enough back in, but yeah, and I forget which one, but I'm pretty sure he did at least one drama, or maybe the Elvis one counts as that. And yes, he did do a comedy. He did what was it called again? It was like Invisible Man, Chevy Chase, Daryl Hannah. Yeah. Anyway, yes. So yeah, the camera focuses on the incredibly bloody hand, and we see Hayek's face, and then suddenly people start sitting up, and she leaps over and bites him, and blood pouring down, and yeah, Seth is stuck like reloading because he wasted so many bullets, and he's unable to save. Yeah, and then we get just a fantastic scene. Right, I guess I'll briefly note they do a really great job of how, yeah, it just is the sleaziest fucking place. There is literally, I think maybe in order for the MPAA to not get really hot and bothered, we only see it fairly briefly, but there is like someone having sex, like just out in the open, with one of these sex workers, but yeah, you see, all these topless girls dancing all over the place, and these rowdy bikers and truckers and such. And it is also clever, okay, so the way that they keep hidden is that they only go after bikers and truckers. So, people that like, yeah, it's going to be noticed that they're gone, but like, who's going to put that much effort into finding them, and how would they find out that that was the specific place that they went? Like, this is before, all the tracking, I'm not the best person to talk about, but I know that there is some, yeah, tracking and such going on. I'm not being paranoid. I don't think much about it, but I do watch some YouTube videos where they talk about, be careful about this and that thing. And shit, what was like, ban VPNs is yeah, it's very fucked. Also, make sure you watch Essence of Thoughts video on god damn it, it's right on the tip of my tongue. US ban on trans people online, something like that. Really, like, yeah, terrifying, but important to know about. Yeah, I think that pretty. Oh, right, and shit, you gotta watch. I'm gonna try to pronounce it right. Matt Baum. I don't think it's Baumi. Baum, but with an E at the end. Video on Kiss of the Spider Woman. Fantastic video. Yeah. Still love that movie. But and he helped me appreciate it even more. But yes, so let's see, we have the yeah, really well done at establishing it. And I love, Juliette Lewis does such fantastic, like, she gets a couple of actual, like, devoted, like, reaction shots, but even without those, like, look at her face when Santanico is dancing. Like, she's like, is this for real? Like, Jesus Christ, stop drooling. This is so pathetic. Like, just, yeah, she's so fucking over it. Like, yeah. But yeah. So the attack, and they managed to, yeah, we get a wonderful montage of a bunch of vampires being staked, and the part where, Frost using all four table legs, and the bit with, aren't they supposed to burn up or something? And then they do, like, on cue, just, yeah. And let's see, I think, yeah, I don't have that much to say. Just a lot of wonderful little gags. Chet Pussy's demise is great. The thing about, shoving the cross into his mouth. And it's so great because the shot, like, we, at the same time we're noticing, oh, her neck, he's gonna, like, try to bite her, because that's the classical place vampires bite. But also her cross, and she uses the cross as a weapon, and his head, like, melts, and, gross, nasty stuff sprays on her head and face. Yeah. And yeah, them finishing off the various ones, and just the shots where the various ones, and Trejo is one of my favorite. He just looks so fucking good with fangs, and the part where, with the whip, Tom Savini, fucking amazing, doing such a great job, and apparently he does really know how to use a whip, which, yeah, does show, and yeah, the way he takes out Trejo. And let's see, yeah, also the part where some of the sex workers, like, lock the door and the dinner is served. And let's see, there's a part where one of the girls is still dancing on the table, and blood sprays on her leg from one of them being killed, and she doesn't seem to mind at all, because, like, this is part of the, yeah. And let's see, I think, does that pretty much bring us to the, yeah, I fucking love that they managed to fit in so much vampire shit for a fairly short amount of, like, yeah, I think it's like 35 maybe minutes of the movie, that from once we realize there's vampires until the end credits start rolling, it's less if you talk about just the part until the vampires are all dead. I think that might be 30 minutes, or just about, maybe a little less even, but many people are saying. But then yeah, they managed to finish, okay, so bats, bats turn into humanoid vampires, but they do look like basically large bats, but with human heads and arms and legs. But some wing shit. You've got some fucking Nosferatu going on with some of the faces and fangs and shit. Let's see. You have this kind of harsh scream they do sometimes when they die, which also appears in Nocturne. I think they might have gotten that from here. Let's see. I guess I'll just briefly note some stuff from this movie shows up in the Half-Life 1 mod. Remember those? I'm old. Vampire Slayer is what it's called, which references multiple vampire movies. This might be the one that they get the most from. Although they do also have one level that has several locations from the movie Blade. Let's see. I am planning on eventually doing a video on some of these Half-Life 1 mods that I remember well. Anyway, yes, so the... let's see. Yeah, okay, without too many details, I'll just very briefly, because I gotta fucking wrap this shit up, Jesus Christ. Yeah, so the we got the, in that game, you have the Mr. 44 pistol. You have the ability to say a prayer to make them not able to attack you, though in the mod, you have a stake instead of a shotgun while you do the prayer. Let's see. You have the broken off a crossbow, although I suppose it could be from something else. I appreciate this is not the only vampire story that has a crossbow used as an effective weapon, but then you also have a partially broken off pool cue for staking. But yeah, let's see. We have the what's the word? Yeah, it's so fucking good the way that so. It seems like they've killed the vampires that there were. And then, Seth saying to Richie, I'm sorry, I love you. And he responds, I love you too, Seth. And comes back as a fucking vampire. And I know I'm not the only person who thinks that Vampire Richie, who's just about had it with Carm, looks like a mix between Frankenstein and Deadite Ash. I'm sorry, but and I don't think that's accidental. I think that they meant to make him look like this. Yeah. And yeah, the thing about, it looks like maybe Seth won't be able to finish him off, but no, he just wants to be the one to finish him off. And he says, I hope you have the peace. I hope to give you the peace in death that I could not give you in life. He really did want for this to work out. And just this wonderful mix between, because when he just says, I love you, Richie, to his dead brother, it's sad, it's moving, even though they're still technically doing evil by choice, and Richie is so horrible because of murdering women for no when it isn't even in the it's one thing once there's a shootout to shoot someone, which clearly Seth, if he thinks, okay, this person is no longer going to shoot at me, he's willing to walk away. He doesn't even have them tie up Pete, for example. Anyway, but then we get the morbid joke of oh, he comes, I love you too, and then he comes back as a vampire, and they argue over killing him, and just, yeah. And the bit where they have to there's a something got broken, so they stuff it with the bodies of the vampires. and the band are suddenly playing on instruments that are made out of human beings. The guitar has a human head and torso and shit, and for some reason they just explode after saying "fuck you, everybody, good night." Like, just so wonderfully, yeah. And the Frost ripping out the heart. Apparently, originally that was supposed to be like a karate chop, and they were like, that's a little bit too much. I'm sorry, ripping out the heart is a million times more epic. We've seen karate chops in other movies. I appreciate fitting it in here, but heart rip, yeah, he's a real heartbreaker. And apparently someone on the crew was like, well, ripping out the heart wouldn't be enough. You still have to stake it. And using the fucking pencil from the order to, they've got the paper for taking down orders and stabbing with the pencil, just wonderful. And they even, like, they beat him, and they fucking beat the shit out of him, and he still gets up, and the beating, the way it's cut, and just, yeah. By the way, the reason the vampire blood isn't red is for the MPAA to be able to have more blood. Apparently, they really got along with the MPAA people. The MPAA people really got the movie and were like, okay, sure, you go for it. So that's interesting. I've heard a lot of horror stories of people who were like, Jesus Christ, the MPAA. Which also, like, I mean, I know Rodriguez had some issues with them on Desperado. That's why that one scene is cut really weirdly. You can read about it in the IMDb trivia for that movie. I don't want to spoil it. But yeah, let's see. The bit where each of them face off against, you have the vampires on one side and the humans on one, and they talk about, what do they know that can work against it? And I like Kate calling him on, if we don't have any silver, then why the fuck are we talking about if silver hurts them, And this, like, wonderful little, because it's so, actually, silver bullets are for werewolves. I think that's maybe what you're thinking of. Silver for vampires. This fucking guy, can you believe it? So that's fun to have that on screen. It is, again, Tarantino writing dialogue where people have seen movies, as there was so many movies before. I'm not sure if Tarantino was the first one. I'm not going to give him credit. It's possible he wasn't. But, I think the 90s was the first time where we really had, like, characters in movies talking as if they've watched fucking movies. It was so freeing. Yeah, and the thing about, is Jacob, willing to do, does he have enough faith for this on the punch? And like, no, listen, we need to work together. For once the machismo is hurting him. It's someone else engaging in machismo hurting him. And yeah, he's been pushing Jacob so much. It's no wonder Jacob punches him. And it's also one of those things, like, Harvey Keitel is one of the people who can really sell that. There's a lot of actors who could sell, the good father, but if he starts, like, throwing punches, we're like, come on, man, we don't believe that. Oh, right, real quick, some more regulars of, got a couple of people from Desperado. Let's see, Christo and Shrug, the guy with the cowboy hat. At the very end, they're with Carlos, Yeah, the two guys there. Right, great that great that Greg is actually in the movie on screen. He's the one who, there's the thing about the catching the beer, and love seeing the cock gun from Desperado actually in use, which, shit, I think there was plans for it to be used in Desperado, and then they just ended up not doing that. So glad that it's here. And it also, I'm sorry, here, it works 100%. It's perfect for the tone. I ultimately am not that unhappy that it doesn't get used in Desperado, but here, like, it would have been criminal if they hadn't used it, if they had just shown it. Because just the fact that, Greg, like, gets up, I think he gets out like a switchblade or something, and then, cock gun at the ready, and then when Greg sits back down, puts away the knife, the cock gun just goes back down, and it's like, how is he, I'm sorry, is he controlling that fucking thing with his mind? What the fuck is going on? but it just works. Somehow with this tone, it just works. And yeah, the let's see. I think that pretty much covers. So right, I like when Kate, she's sent over to stab, and she's like, I can't do it. This handsome man face drawn by Julia Lepetite. I don't know how to, and then suddenly he gets up, and then she starts stabbing, just wonderful. Just, it's such a great, because like it's this thing of like she gets to ultimately be badass, but without it like just going against her characterization up to this point, because they would just be like weird if she was just amazing at it from right away. She does get really good with the crossbow, but the stabbing is a different thing. Yeah, easier to pull a trigger than to stake a vampire. Easier to destroy than to send a servant of Satan back to hell. And yeah, I think, yeah, so gotta fit in, yeah, we have Tom Savini, legend. So glad he's in the movie. That was also something, I think it's on the commentary track. It's somewhere on the DVD they talk about. We can't put him in the movie and then have him do fucking nothing. We gotta have him, make sure that we really put him to good use. And I think they do. But yeah, we have the thing of like someone got bitten and isn't showing, isn't telling the others, and then suddenly attacks one of the others. Again, that we got to have that trope in there, and it's just so fun. Like one of the vampires just sits up and like bites him on the arm, and he's like, ah, and then he covers it with the big leather vest jacket, so no one thinks, yeah, jacket, vest wouldn't cover his arm, so nobody thinks about it, and then he's standing there, and then suddenly, got a fang, oh shit. And he's hearing like, voices of like, kill them. And his hand turns and he has to hide it. And then the other hand turns, then he hides that behind. And Skyler looks over and he's like, yeah. Mm-hmm. And Skyler starts bang. And yeah, we have the Nom flashback, which apparently got a really good reaction from some audience. They were like, oh, Nom flashback, awesome, which is also, yeah, you got to have that in there. Again, trope. And yeah, really not a big fan of some of the words he uses during that. Some really racist, but yeah. And yeah, just having a Nom flashback, completely apropos of fucking nothing. Like, what does Nom have to do with fucking vampires? What the fuck? And then suddenly the hands behind, and then, and he's like, just like really strong reaction to it. I haven't seen him in anything else. I'd like to, though. Apparently he was also someone that they were really happy to be working with. The actor who plays Frost. Let's see. Yeah, and the thing where, shit, I don't remember the exact, so someone like gets flung through the air, and then, oh shit, crashes through the door. And also the thing, what's that sound? I thought it was birds. It's bats, and you just see this swarm, and it's like, oh no, like how are they gonna stop that many fucking bloodsuckers, So yeah, the crashes through, bats fly through, and he's standing there like doing the I am Jesus pose, and then he like points, and they, I forget, it's maybe somewhere on the DVD, someone pointed out, how the fuck is he all of a sudden like king of the goddamn vampires? He turned like 20 seconds ago, but yeah, he sends some suckheads flying, and one of them, like, it looks like the bat is going to get stuck in the door, and then suddenly it's the actual, humanoid vampire stuck in the door, and he, like, I forget what he does some violence to get it to yield, and yeah, Jacob's also gotten bitten, and they have the entire conversation. Again, fantastic dialogue and acting, the whole thing about, promise me you'll kill me when the time comes. And when Seth says it, it's clear he's not going to take any pleasure in it. He normally, killing is no big deal for him, but here, like, no, he actually is, it's going to hurt, but he is willing to do it because it is what Jacob wants, and he respects that. That's the again, he, like, there is more to the character than, because than you might at first think. when Jacob asks for violence from Seth on his own terms, Seth agrees. He doesn't say, no, 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 I choose the violence. As long as violence is somewhat under his control, because he is being asked to do it, not forced. Yeah, there is a certain consistency and some like level of, I don't know, honor or something. Yeah, there. Anyway, I think that does bring us to so yeah, wonderful when they go through. I love that a bunch of the crates have shit they can't use for anything. Like, I think there were like action figures or something in there, but then there's also, the I'm just gonna put out there, I don't think it makes any sense, and I love that. I don't see how it would work in real life. Maybe today you could make it. You make a lot of impressive things today, but back then. So apparently, when she does when she cocks the crossbow, apparently it moves another arrow into which, no, but the crossbow, that's, the downside of using crossbow is it takes a long time to ready another arrow. I don't know. It's possible that something existed back then that could work. Yeah. And the thing about, okay, so make this tap water into holy water, and they fill fucking condoms with holy water. I'm sorry, it's so wonderfully profane and just fucked up but creative, And yeah, Seth is so manly that in the last, you know, uh, bit of the movie, he is literally wielding this massive dick replacement. So basically they took one of those. I want to say it's like a real, like a jackhammer kind of thing. Yeah, he put a fucking stake in, which yeah, if you have a wooden stick, if you can't find a partner, use a wooden stick and cutting to make it sharp. Yeah, you could. Yeah. And yeah, Jacob with the he gets like a bat and makes a crucifix out of that and the shotgun, and shoots, reloads, and says a prayer to keep them at bay. It's just wonderful. But yeah, so they go back. Yeah, and the fucking water, that's a super soaker with holy water, which melts them and sets them on fire and shit. And he's throwing the condoms and just, yeah, fantastic stuff. And her nailing one after another right in the fucking head, and the fucking Savini turning into a rat for some fucking reason, and we get some really impressive animatronics on the movement of the thing in the face, and just yeah, I really appreciate how sparing the CG is. I mean, obviously the bats must be CG. Not really any way around that. And apparently the bit where, let's see, I think it's when Jacob is trying to get to, or yeah, when he makes his way into the room where the others are hiding, there's just a massive amount of vampires. And the first row or two are performers in makeup, and then there's puppets, and you can't see that, because you can only see the torso. And then behind that there's apparently cardboard cutouts, but you don't realize that you can't, that's that not all of them are performers in prosthetic makeup. Yeah, I think that brings, oh right, the entire monologue that Santanico does to Clooney is also fantastic. Some of my favorite line reads by Hayek in one of the movies she made with Rodriguez. Yeah, not a fan of the misogyny of the Clooney line, which was apparently an ad lib, and originally Rodriguez wasn't going to keep it in the movie, but then they put it in the trailer, and he feels like, oh, the trailer kind of builds to it, which, yeah, is true. So he felt he had to put it back in the movie. But again, not saying that that it being in the movie means that they endorse it or anything. I think I do love his reaction to it. As she's saying, he's like, oh, really? And yeah, let's see. I guess I'll just briefly note, yeah, I just fucking love like the level of gore and really impressive special effects. Like it approaches Carpenter's The Thing, you know, and certainly the amount of violence I would say is um, reached and maybe surpassed of that in this. And yeah, so yeah, they leave, you know, their safety, and doesn't take long for Jacob to turn. Right, the rat getting that was also, I think that was also the crossbow, you know, and doesn't that also like yeah, and then it like kicks it away, and it like, you know, is on fire and shit. Just yeah. Um, I think yeah, and Jacob reaching Frost is like, "Rah," you know, and he shoves the shotgun into his stomach and, you know, shoots, and the way Frost, like, I love the performance of Fred Williamson. I'm pretty sure his name is Fred Williamson. It's just the way he is, you know, his entire upper body moves in, it's just perfectly, yeah. And eventually he just melts in front of, because like, yeah, I could imagine his heart got fucked in the shooting there, and the shoving and shit. Also, really love the thing they note, the spongy bodies of vampires, which they note on the commentary track. That's a new idea they came up with, and it has appeared in some vampire fiction since this. Yeah, I feel like, is there anything left that I really wanted to talk about? So yeah, they point out in the commentary track this thing of, you know, they wanted to push things, and yeah, literally the child actor is having a gruesome death on screen that's so bad that he's begging to be killed, and, you know, yeah, that's something that you a lot of times wouldn't see, but you would in fucking Grindhouse and schlock in general. You know, a lot of 80s movies really show really fucked up things. And right, also like the, you know, him taking out Jacob as promised, and he said, I swear in Jesus Christ's name," and then shoots. You know, just or does he throw whatever? You know, he takes him out. And the bit where, you know, let's say, I think it's like Kate who rolls and then gets the gun and then shoots is amazing. And that thing about, and that's apparently also a reference to some movie. I don't think I've seen it, but the what was it called? The thing about, you know, when I only have 2 bullets left, should I use them on us? I was like, no, use them on the next 2 fuckers who try to bite you. Did I mention I like that Jacob is not willing to say mean motherfucker? He just says mean of God. Servant of God, that's it. Yeah, and the thing about, I don't believe in vampires, I don't want to hear anybody else say I don't believe in vampires, because I don't fucking believe in vampires, but I believe in what I just saw vampires. They are straight from hell, and if there's hell, there's gotta be heaven. There's just gotta be. And yeah, that pretty well brings us to the end. So yeah, there's some holes in some of the walls that let in, you know, light, and then they start shooting more holes to make more rays of light. Yeah, reminded me of Near Dark. Nicely done. There's an example of another movie that showed some really fucked up shit. I should watch that movie again. Bill Paxton was fucking amazing in it. But yeah, that movie is also clearly something that gave them ideas for I definitely do think the rays of light is from that. Yeah, I think that might just about. I love that somehow inexplicably there's a fucking disco ball inside. Like, it makes no sense. Why would they have that in there when it fucking kills them? But there you go, you know. Right, also the title, so obviously in part it refers to the fact that the Titty Twister is open from dusk till dawn. By the end of the movie, you realize, oh, that's because at dawn they have to go to their coffins or something, like they're fucking vampires, you know. but it was also a reference to like Grindhouse movies would show movies from dusk till dawn. So they were like winking and nodding at that. And you know, if you know, you know, people who love Grindhouse cinema picked up on it. And it also like works as, you know, because like as a movie title, like, you know, once you get it chunk into it, you realize, oh, they actually have to survive from dusk till dawn against all these vampires, you know. um I kind of love the math Jacob does. You know, I can see, you know, the thing about, okay, 20 to 30 minutes is what we have before they break down the door. And apparently the reason they're so slow to get to the doors because none of them can just agree on, okay, listen, I'll move, you know, I'll move to the side and then you can get through another. Instead, they keep trying to push and shove past. But anyway, but then he says, I have an hour before I turn. Do you? I guess ultimately you do, because that's what it looks like. But it only took a few minutes for Sex Machines, so... And again, like, he the one who said, are we just remembering stuff we've seen in movies? Like, what the fuck are you basing it on, man? Jesus Christ. Um, and yeah, and Frost also turned immediately. He turned even faster than Sex Machine, so it's like, why are you, you know, okay, plot armor, obviously. Um, yeah. Carlo shows up. They manage to get in there, and all the vampires die. And we see not long after that it was like a temple, and I'm gonna not dig myself into a hole by um, guessing which. But yeah, you can look it up. There's yeah, it's a temple, and that's apparently that was something they wanted to do because they were specifically thinking of that mythology as like, oh, that, you know, there are vampires in that mythology, and, you know, what if some of them were still around, you know, and they would have this bar where they could feed. And love that they actually do a fucking, like, who does that in the 90s? Oh my god, I cannot fucking believe I'm blanking on what that special effect is called. Jesus Christ. Okay, I swear I had it on the tip of my tongue when I started the sentence. God damn it. Shit. Yeah. I guess it's not coming to me. Okay. In older movies, when they needed like a really big thing that they couldn't quite build, yeah, they would have like they would have a picture and make it look like, you know, oh, that's actually what, you know, that is. And you know, one does indeed appear in the 1982 The Thing. I forget, it's been so long since I watched the 50s The Thing. That one might also have it. Um, but yeah, I feel quite confident that when we see there at the very end, when we see the temple, that was done with that effect rather than I feel confident that it's not CG, for example. And yeah. Um, God, I feel like it's right on the tip of my tongue. I'm going to move on. I'm not going to take forever. Um, but yeah, let's see. The, um, yeah, I was like Seth lecturing Carlos on, you know, they were vampires. Um, that's why they blew up in the sun, you know. And yet the thing about, well, I drove past here sometimes. I've never been, you know, because like who thinks about like, yeah, you wouldn't expect there to be fucking vampires, you know. Why, how would you know? I also kind of love how so many characters in this movie just kind of accept, like, nobody is just like completely emotionally devastated by the fact that vampires exist. They get used to it pretty quickly, you know. Oh, right. In the commentary track, they explain, you know, El Rey is a place where, or its equivalent in the Getaway novel, It's a place where you can only you can't make more money. You can only live off the money you had when you went in. Eventually, that's going to run out, and you're going to start cannibalizing each other. And that's something that Seth is well aware is going to happen. Yeah, I think that pretty well covers. Yeah. Let's see. God damn it! I feel like there's something else. I don't know. Maybe not. Let's see. It's very impressive how much guts, gore, and blood and violence they fit into. Yeah, half an hour of vampires. But it's like it's dozens within a very short amount of time there. Quite impressive. Yeah, I think that might cover. I feel like. Is there one thing? Oh, right. Apparently, if I understand correctly, the tattoo that Seth has was Clooney's idea after watching Once Were Warriors, which pretty sure that's what that movie's called. The one with the actor who plays Django and now also Boba Fett, and his family, and like culture clash between like indigenous and modern shit. I hope I have it right, but yeah, it works well because that is also a movie about tragedy, and there's an element of violence and when it is applied and such, and how that can lead to a lot of harm beyond the immediate obvious. In real life, violence should only ever be the last resort. I'm not saying it's never necessary. It was necessary to kill Hitler. It was necessary to shit. What's it called again? Shit. God damn it. The that protest for Stonewall. Stonewall was necessary. Yeah, I think that pretty well gets us to. Let's see. Yeah, very cool that they're at the end. He takes off his jacket, and we see how much of the arm is. It's very cool looking. I only ever played the demo of the. I don't know if there was more than one, but there was at least one From Dusk Till Dawn video game, which also focused on him killing vampires. I don't know. It's possible it was just the demo thing, but I don't know. It's possible that there was, yeah, the crime element elsewhere in the game. But I remember that game made sure that we could see the tattoo on his arm. Yeah, I think that might just about cover. Let's see. Right. One of the people I showed this movie to noted that why would the sex workers agree to allow to be treated so badly? Why wouldn't they try to find work elsewhere? And yeah, the vampires are the answer to that. They don't give a shit about that because they're gonna get to eat. And I think that pretty well covers. Yeah. So let's see. I think yeah. Kate, there at the end. Oh, right. I also appreciate it. Early in the movie, we have the thing about it. These are not people you try to negotiate with. And then there at the end, he does negotiate, successfully, but it's because Richie was dead. I mean, technically the money's going to last twice as long now because there's only one of you, but okay, sure. but yeah, and also the thing about, I hold you responsible for all these deaths. And yeah, and at first he says, you can't make it up. Then what did he say? 15% or something like that, Yeah. So yeah, there at the end, he does give her some of the money, which he definitely wasn't going to do before this whole ordeal with the vampires. And yeah, she has the motorhome, and clearly she can drive it. We see her take off in it. Yeah, I think that pretty well brings us to the yeah. What was the other thing? Yeah. So a bit of a sign that she has hardened somewhat is that she, I mean, the implication is pretty clear when she asks, "Do you want some company?" And yeah, again, it's only really here at the end that we see there's little bits and pieces, but yeah, some sort of redemption ish. Yeah, I'm not saying you have to forgive him, but yeah, Seth. Yeah, um, the he says, I may be a bastard, but I'm not a fucking bastard. And I do appreciate that distinction. There are like rankings. For those who don't know, it goes bastard, fucking bastard, and then gets somewhat worse with member of the second Trump administration, and finally President Donald Trump in his second term.